Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto receives his clan scrolls from an unlikely source. He starts to walk a completely different path. Part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. It had not been a good day for Naruto. As the blonde genin took his usual seat at Ichiraku's, he decided to revise the statement and surmised that it had actually been more like a giant crap fest. He had made it through to the next stage of the Chunin exams and had a month to train. His sensei Kakashi had disappeared somewhere to train the damned Uchiha, and Iruka had too many classes and too much paperwork to give him any time. He had thanked the heavens when Abisu-san had offered his services, but he had disappeared after Pervy Sage had knocked him out. This brought Naruto's thoughts to the present and his newest betrayal. Jiraiya. One of the legendary Sannin of Konoha, though all Naruto had seen was an absurdly strong perverted old man. With his ninja centerfold, he had managed to get the Pervy Sage to agree to train him. He had done something to his stomach that had fixed the ache he had been feeling since his fight with the snake guy in the Forest of Death and had taught him to walk on water, but just when they were talking about Toad's summoning, Sakura had shown up and Jiraiya had ended his role as Naruto's mentor and walked away whispering into the Pinkette's ear about training her to become the first female Hokage. It's just not fair, you know. The blonde genin screamed, slamming his fists on the counter. Calm down, brat. You're disturbing my meal. Naruto turned to his neighbor, an old man with bandages across half his face, a tuft of hair sticking out at the top and an X-shaped scar on his chin. He looked as old as Grandpa Hokage. Naruto bowed his head in apology. Sorry Grandpa, it's just not fair, you know. The old man shook his head while he ate some more ramen. No, I don't know, but perhaps you want to talk about it. I'm Shimura Danzo, what is yours? Naruto ordered some ramen for himself and had a mouthful before he said anything else. I'm Uzumaki Naruto, Orange Genin of Konohagakure. And I'm probably going to stay that, you know. I thought when Iruka-sensei acknowledged me as a ninja of Konoha and my joining Team 7 meant I was finally going to be a ninja who protects Konoha and serve my village and have friends, comrades I could count on, you know. I thought I would get real training and become strong so I can achieve my dream of becoming the next Hokage, the best ninja of the whole village. I was going to the greatest Hokage, the greatest defender of the village, so everyone would finally respect me and see me as a ninja who love his village and not as a demon. Instead I've been reminded how gullible I can be. Kakashi-sensei, who gave this big speech about teamwork, has run off with his precious Uchiha to train him. Uchiha is getting further and further ahead of me, and just when I think I might have found someone else to train me, Sakura-chan steals him because he's a pervert and she's not a boy. Naruto finished his bowl and rested his head on the table. How can I get strong enough to protect my village when no one will give me a chance, you know? The leader of Root was at a loss. The man who lead Konoha's even blacker Black Ops had decided to treat himself to his secret passion for Ichiraku ramen and had come face to face with Konoha's Jinchuriki. He had been planning to take the power of the Kyuubi for himself. He'd laced his left arm with Sharingan eyes and injected himself with the first Hokage's blood for that very purpose, and yet he now found himself losing the desire to do such a thing. The Jinchu Naruto's words struck a chord in him. As a child he had always felt like he was always trying to catch up to Seru, the Sandaime Hokage. He loved Konoha too, and he'd always wanted to be Hokage himself, to be the great protector of the village. Years before he had attempted to forge an alliance with Hanzo the Salamander to that end, but that plan had fallen apart. In fact he now felt ashamed of the planned coup, to his own surprise. Hanzo had long thought the same as many that Uzumaki Naruto was the nine-tailed demon fox in human form, a menace. Now he saw his own reflection, a little boy struggling for recognition and chasing the shadow of his teammate. He had known his father and grandfather had died to protect the village, but though he knew Naruto's parents had given their lives to protect the village, the Orange Genin of Konoha did not. He knew nothing of his heritage. He agreed with Sarutobi that the name Namikaze would have drawn the Yondaime Hokage's attention, but the Uzumaki name had an allure too. They had once had their own village and specialized in fuinjutsus. Seals. He had researched them a great deal when he had been developing his own seals and had a number of their scrolls with him on this day. What you have told me today gives me pause for thought, young Uzumaki. I will admit that I already knew who you were before you introduced yourself, and I have borne you an ill will for as long as you have lived. But what you have said today has given me a new perspective. You speak of your love for Konoha and your desire to be her #1 protector. I share that dream, but I fear my team has passed. So I think I shall help you. He reached into his bag and made a mental note to have the root files on Uzumaki Naruto moved from the enemies section and into the allies section. The Uzumaki were a very prestigious family of ninja. They had close familial ties to the Senju family, who founded Konoha, and they themselves had their own village. These scrolls contain their history and their jutsus. They are your birthright. I'm afraid I can't afford the time to train you myself, but I am sure that you can overcome this obstacle. In fact, I shall put a small sum on you to win in your match, so don't let me down." With that, the old man that had just overturned the orange genin's life in a matter of minutes stood and walked away. Naruto ran home clutching the Uzumaki scrolls tightly to his chest. He literally could not believe his own luck. A man he had never met before had given him a way of possibly winning. He locked the door and pulled his training schedule to start rearranging his training. He'd never done any work on Fuinjutsu, but he had high hopes considering they were part of his very bloodline. Some of the designs made him think of his own seal, and Uzumaki must have designed it or had a hand in its creation. He also realized the crest that decorated his coat and the flak jackets of every Chunin and Jonin in Konoha was in fact the Uzumaki clan symbol. When Grandpa Scary Chin had said the Uzumakis and the Senjus were close, he meant it. In the Hokage's office, Aratobi Hiruzen was working his way through paperwork when there came a knock at the door. Who could be calling at this hour? The Sandaime Hokage mused as he went to the door. "Hello Saru, old friend, may I come in?" With a great deal of sputtering, Hiruzen led his old friend and rival into the office. They had both dreamed of working in as children. As he lit his pipe, Hiruzen turned to the seated Danzo and asked him why he had come. "I had an interesting conversation with Uzumaki Naruto." Hiruzen tensed at this. He knew his old friend had some extremist views and an interest in Naruto could prove hazardous. "I have done some terrible things, Saru." Hiruzen stifled a gasp of shock. "I've always believed that we ninja should hide in the shadows, and I have been vicious in dealing with any perceived enemy of Konoha. But that boy, I saw him as a possible tool, but when he started to tell me what he has experienced, I felt my heart go out to him. I have felt some of what he had felt, though not as severely. He wants to be the Hokage, the #1 defender of Konoha. After all he has had to endure, he still wants to protect Konoha. But he is ignored by his teachers and he feels he is falling further and further behind his peers. I can't help but sympathize." Hiruzen smiled. "You're finally starting to see my side after all these years. It's about time, old friend." Meanwhile, Naruto was poring over the Uzumaki Fuinjutsu scrolls till he stopped at one that caught his eye. Yin Seal. The ninja stores chakra in a focus point and can use it in the event of chakra exhaustion or for certain derived jutsu. See Creation Rebirth, invented by Senju Tsunade. Tsunade. Naruto took a moment to try and remember where he'd heard that name when it came to him. Tenten. Lee's teammate had given a 3-hour speech about her. The speech was supposed to make point about how Kunoichi could be just as good as Shinobi, if not better. It had instead convinced everyone that Tenten's interests lay in the fairer sex. Senju Tsunade was the granddaughter of the Shodai Hokage, trained by the Sandaime Hokage, and the primary force for the inclusion of Iryonin into ninja teams. One of the legendary Sannin, like Pervy Sage. Naruto made a note to visit Tenten to get some more information on Tsunade and set to work on crafting the Yin Seal. He thought back to one of his few conversations with Pervy Sage. Another chakra, a different color from his normal chakra that he could use. If he could make this Fuinjutsu work, he could channel the red chakra there and use it whenever instead of just when he's angry. I gave him the Uzumaki scrolls. Hiruzen dropped his pipe. You had them then? I always wondered where they had gone. Grandma Mito always said you were popping over for Fuinjutsu lessons. Danzo sipped at his tea and gave his old friend and longtime rival a long stare. If he's going to live as an Uzumaki and not an Amicus, then he may as well have access to all of his Uzumaki heritage. It had been Hiruzen's decision that the boy be given his mother's family name, believing his mother's name might attract less attention than his father's. It was very kind of you to give him that, but I have looked over the matchups for the next part of the Chunin exams, and I am not sure Fuinjutsu will help him much against a Juken specialist. Danzo began to laugh, so much so he had to put his cup down. Hiruzen was in two minds about what he was seeing. On the one hand, he had never seen Danzo laugh with so much glee in decades. On the other hand, Danzo clearly knew something about the Uzumaki clan that he didn't. And that bothered him. Hiruzen relit his pipe and continued to enjoy the company of an old friend. Naruto found himself in a dark corridor. The floor was flooded and the place looked like nobody had set foot there in years. He heard a rumble and moved towards the sound. He came to a room with a huge gate and a large seal was stuck to it. Hello? Is anyone here? I'm looking for a fox. He's supposed to be really big and has 9 tails. The room shook with a roar and a large pair of red eyes appeared on the other side of the gate. Who dares disturb me? Naruto fell to the ground with a splash. Okay, perhaps taunting the demon that nearly destroyed Konoha was not the best plan, but it's done and at least now he knew where he was. He cleared his throat and stepped up to the gate. Hi there. I'm Uzumaki Naruto and I'm your Jinchikiri, you know. Listen, your chakra leaks out a bit and it's been really hand at times, but I would really like to be able to turn it on and off, so I've set up a Yin Seal to store the chakra for when I need it. Now since you're living in me you're more like a tenant, so let's make that red chakra your rent and you just send it there, you know. The fox hit the gate hard. Insolent brat. Do you know who I am? The fox snarled with contempt at his newest Jinchikiri. No I don't, so what's your name? I am what did you just say? In the village of the Hidden Leaf, Achuin Proctor was dead and the members of Anbu, elite ninja in the service of the Hokage, were on high alert. Orochimaru was nearby and Yakushi Kabuto had been revealed as a traitor. Even more distressing was the news of the alliance between Orochimaru and the Kazekage of Sunagakure. Hiruzen had not revealed this bit of information to the elders because to do so would compromise his newfound source. The Sandaime Hokage walked to the window of his office and whispered thank you Naruto. Tenten winced in pain as she made her way home from helping her teammates training. After 2 weeks of helping Neji perfect his Hakesho Katen, she was feeling bruises everywhere. In truth she was holding back in the exercises, not out of a hesitance for injuring a teammate, but for her own sake. In her match with Subaku no Tamari, the Sand sibling had driven her folded fan into the Konoha Kunoichi's back. She had walked home after the match, but her back had continued to trouble her. She pulled out her Iryonin scroll and wondered if she should try using Shosen Jutsu again, but shook her head. She had long given up trying to be a legendary Iryonin like her idol Tsunade-sama. When she had tried to perform Shosen Jutsu the fish had quickly died. She considered what had happened to her team. She had been defeated humiliatingly quickly, Lee was in hospital and would probably never return to being a ninja, and Neji had revealed a darkness in his soul that she hadn't seen before. To think he could inflict so much damage on his own cousin suddenly Tenten's back exploded into spasms of pain. She fell to her knees and saw the floor getting closer when she felt someone catch her. She felt her body being lifted up. She looked up to see who her Samaritan, but soon didn't need to see a face. There was only one person in Konoha that wore that much orange. Naruto. The orange genin of Konoha had been on his way to visit Tenten and saw her collapse. She said his name and then passed out. Holding her in his arms he made his way to her family's shop. Tenten's family didn't use their surname except for trade. They were Konoha's specialty blacksmiths when ninja wanted to pay the higher price for better quality weapons. Their father, Katana Kage, had begun creating weapons and tools with built-in Fuinjutsu. His best-selling piece were Nunchaku with Fujutsu Kaioen built-in. He got through the door and made his way to the stairs and what he guessed would be her room until Tenten. The voice boomed and a large man sporting a mullet with spiked hair and holding a hammer burst through a wall to stand before Naruto. What have you done to my daughter you ruffian? Katana Kage suddenly ripped his shirt off to reveal a heavily muscled torso. If you think you can attack my darling daughter and then sneak like an eel into my place of business and into my abode, then I shall have to show you why I am called the everlasting titan of the hidden leaf. With that he struck a pose that made his muscles bulge and shine in the light. These kind of like caterpillar brows and bushy brows sensei. No sir. Your daughter collapsed so I brought her here you know. And I have been studying Iryonin Jutsu, so I thought I could find out what was wrong, you know and treat it before you knew so she didn't get in trouble for overdoing it with her training. Naruto kept his eyes closed, waiting for his head to be knocked off. When that didn't happen he opened his eyes. The everlasting titan of the hidden life was crying, his hammer lying forgotten on the floor. That there is such a true gentleman in your generation who would do such a thing for a fellow ninja. Orange-garbed Iryonin in training. I am deeply moved. The Tanakaji patted Naruto's shoulder with such force that he wondered if he'd need Shosen Jutsu for himself. Tenten's room is thought orange gentleman. Might I know your name as you know mine? Naruto made his way up. My name's Uzumaki Naruto, future Hokage. When Tenten woke she could tell it was night time. She took a moment to assess her surroundings. She was in her room and she was on her front with her face on its side to allow her to breathe. And her top had been removed. She immediately surged up to cover herself and froze. There was no shooting pain or spasms in her back. In fact it was better than ever. She checked herself over and all of the bruises from training with Neji were healed too. She refastened her top and turned to see Naruto enter her room with a tray of food and a bundle of scrolls. What is the meaning of this? Naruto looked at her with a vacant look. Your dad made dinner and I brought some up in case you'd woken up. Your dad handed me these scrolls to go over if what I was doing wasn't enough. They're actually what I had come to see you about, so it's kinda funny if you don't count the part where you passed out you know. Tenten took a moment to look at her orange Samaritan. He was different. He wasn't wearing his jacket and he had taken off his hit I-8. She could see he had a gem on his forehead and through the mesh shirt she could see what appeared to be a tattoo on his belly that was fading. The team guy Kunoichi considered herself an authority on Fuinjutsu, it was her specialty in her team, so she knew that she was seeing. The one on Naruto's belly was a mystery, but she could recognize the gem on the orange genin's forehead was clearly the yin seal that Tsunade herself had used. These details were curious enough, but what he had said raised further questions. For her father to have given Naruto her Iryonin Jutsu scrolls, it would mean that Naruto was the reason her back was fine and her injuries had healed. It didn't gel in her head. When she had seen Naruto in combat, he had been clumsy and often resorted to Kage Bunshin no Jutsu and pranks. Furthermore, to have done such a good job he would need to have an incredibly high level of chakra control. Naruto, what are you doing with Tsunade Hime's seal on your head? Why do you want to look at my scrolls, and when did you learn Iryo Ninjutsu? Naruto pulled his jacket back on and sat next to Tenten while she took the dinner out of his hands. The yin seal is actually an Uzumaki clan fuinjutsu. Tsunade's grandma used the same fuinjutsu and her name was Uzumaki Mido. I got the Uzumaki scrolls a little over a week ago and when I saw the name of Tsunade, I thought of your speech, so I thought you'd probably have more information on her. I've been practicing Iryo Ninjutsu about the same amount of time. The Uzumaki clan specialized in fuinjutsu, but they also had a bunch of Iryo Ninjutsu exercises. Tenten felt a cold sweat on the back of her neck. Iryo Ninjutsu required perfect chakra control, and the dead last genin had apparently mastered Shosenjutsu. Naruto, you know if you're really wanting to going up against Neji, you can't just have fuinjutsu and Iryo Ninjutsu. Neji is a Juken genius, and now that he's mastered I can't tell you. Can't Haddock-san teach you some more Taijutsu or some long-range ninjutsu? Naruto chuckled, more to himself than a Tenten. It's alright Ten-chan, this yin seal is handier than you might realize. And Kakashi-sensei is too busy with Ichiha. The door burst from its hinges and Katana Kage entered looking furious. And holding 2 bowls of ice cream. Naruto-kun. I came to bring you and Tentenheim some delicious dessert, but your words have stolen the joy that I had intended to serve you with. How can your sensei not want to see such a gentleman ninja succeed? Naruto took a moment to recover from the shock of the intrusion, then simply sighed and shrugged his shoulders. It is decided then. I shall teach you Taijutsu and help you train as reward for your skills in helping my beloved daughter. Tenten was a deep red by this point. Naruto on the other hand felt no such embarrassment. He leapt into the air and hugged his new sensei. Thank you Mullet-sensei. I look forward to any task you set for me. Tenten held her breath, expecting an explosion at the nickname. Instead her father pulled the boy into a tighter hug. To think that a teacher and student can become close enough to bestow nicknames after such a short time. It is so moving. Why? The hug and the crying and laughing continued till they managed to collect themselves. Naruto, I must give you a nickname too. As you have mastered techniques of the legendary Sanin Tsunade, the Slug Princess I shall call you Slug Prince. Come here tomorrow at dawn and we shall begin your training. Tentenheim, after I have cleaned the dishes I shall come up to say goodnight, then your friend needs to go home okay? Tenten nodded and Katana Kage left. Tenten turned to Naruto, how do you do that? Naruto looked at the kunoichi with a confused look. Do what? Tenten sighed, of course. She noticed some messy stitching on his jacket and trousers, some of them looked fresh. Naruto, are you having money trouble? Naruto sputtered at this, was it really that obvious? Then how come nobody else had? It's nothing new you know, I got basic living expenses while I was at the academy and I get some from missions. According to the Uzumaki scrolls I think I might have an inheritance, but the accounts are apparently at a post station near to the village, but we can't leave unless we're in our team or are at least Chunin. I tried looking for Kakashi-sensei and I left a message like a week ago, but I've not heard from him and if I even try asking pervy sage Jiraiya, then Sakura tells me to back off of her sensei. Tenten fumed. Basic living expenses or not, she knew for a fact that missions paid well enough to buy decent clothes to replace damaged ones. It meant that someone on Team 7 was helping themselves to Naruto's cut and the orange genin was too naive to realize. She decided she had to help him out. Naruto, if you're finding Iryo Ninjutsu so interesting have you thought of getting some work at the medical center? I used to work there between missions when I first joined Team Guy and I could probably get you an interview. Naruto smiled and nodded in gratitude, then got a serious look. Ten-chan, why did you switch from Iryo Ninjutsu to Fuinjutsu? You seemed really into becoming the next Tsunade. It was Tenten's turn to look serious. It turns out I have no real talent for Iryo Ninjutsu. I have plenty of chakra reserves and stamina, but I just don't have that level of accuracy like I do with weapons. But that's fine. Even if I can't perform Iryo Ninjutsu, I know I can still be a splendid kunoichi like Tsunade Haim. Naruto started laughing, Tenten looked confused so Naruto explained. Tenten, just then you sounded like caterpillar brows. Tenten blushed but joined in. When they finished, they both thought about Lee's condition. Naruto got up and turned to the kunoichi. Tenten, I'm going to work my hardest at my Iryo Ninjutsu and find a way to help Lee recover. I promise. He smiled and gave her a thumb up. Tenten blushed, the nice guy pose was used by Lee and Guy sensei when they made an unbreakable vow. She realized that Naruto had every intention of making this promise happen and she actually believed him. Thank you Naruto, but can I ask one more favor of you? Naruto nodded. I know that with Lee in hospital it would seem that he's the only one of our team in trouble, but I must confess I am more worried about Neji. What he did to Hinata was so brutal and angry, like nothing I had seen before. I fear he has started on a dark path of hatred and I don't think I can get him off of it. Can you try and help him? Naruto looked at her with a serious face. I promised to beat him, now I'll beat some sense into him too. It must have something to do with the Hyuga clan, what do you know about him? Tenten considered his question. Not much, he doesn't really like to talk about himself. I know his father died around 10 years ago, and he's a member of the branch house, the protectors of the main house. Hinata is his paternal cousin, their fathers were twins, Neji's father was the younger of them, which is why he's in the branch house. Aside from that I can't think of anything else. Do you want to head to the medical center tomorrow after Dad's training session? Naruto nodded and made his way to the door. Naruto. Will you do it? Will you save Neji? Naruto opened the door and gave her the nice guy pose again. Count on it, Ten-chan. You can tell Fuzzy Brows Sensei that I promised to help Team Guy. Outside, Naruto made his way home and considered the direction his day had gone. He had successfully performed Shosen Jutsu on another person and obtained new Iryo Ninjutsu scrolls that were connected to a legendary Sannin. He had gained a new friend, and with it came the possibility of a paying job and some proper Taijutsu training. He had also promised to restore Team Guy. He wondered if he should have brought up what he had discovered during his research, maybe, but he decided he wasn't going to use the information unless it was absolutely necessary. He cleared his throat and stepped up to the gate. Hi there. I'm Uzumaki Naruto and I'm your Jinchikiri, you know. Listen, your chakra leaks out a bit and it's been really hand at times, but I would really like to be able to turn it on and off, so I've set up a yin seal to store the chakra for when I need it. Now since you're living in me you're more like a tenant, so let's make that red chakra your rent and you just send it there, you know. The fox hit the gate hard. Insolent brat. Do you know who I am? The fox snarled with contempt at his newest Jinchikiri. No I don't, so what's your name? I am what did you just say? Naruto moved closer to the cage. I asked you your name. You know mine and if we're going to work together I should know my comrade's name. Kyuubi snorted. Comrades with a brat like you? Besides, what makes you think I'd have a name? The words of Uchiha Madara circled in his mind. You are just a massive chakra to be used by strong ninja like me. Everyone should have a name, how can we acknowledge each other if we don't know each other's names? I can't very well say thank you Fox or thank you Ninetails, you know. The demon fox known to many as Kyuubi wasn't sure he could control himself at this point. He began to growl. You seem to be angry a lot, you know. Maybe if we could be friends you wouldn't have to be so angry all the time, you know. The fox collected himself and tried to sound as tough as possible. How about this brat, I'll send chakra to your new seal and you can do whatever you like with it. If I am impressed then I will give you my name. Naruto grinned. Deal. Find what affinity someone has, pieces of paper made from a special type of tree that are grown and fed with chakra are used that react to even the slightest hint of chakra in any of a number of ways, depending on the nature latent in the chakra. A fire affinity will ignite the paper and turn it to ash. A wind affinity will split the paper in two. A lightning affinity will wrinkle the paper. An earth affinity will cause the paper to turn to dirt and crumble away. Finally, those with a water affinity will make the paper wet or damp. Copy Ninja Kakashi held a piece of paper out to his prized student Uchiha Sasuke. If I am to teach you my special technique we need to see that you have the right affinity. Sasuke paused as he reached out for the paper. Where's Uzumaki? He's in the next stage of the exams too. He wasn't sure why he started to care about Naruto's development. He knew that to wake the Mangekyo he had to kill his best friend, but since the mission where they fought Zabuza he had felt an affection. Maybe this is what it was to have a friend. He decided to let the emotion run through him, he needed a real friend, he couldn't awaken the Mangekyo by killing a fake friend. Uzumaki Naruto has proven that he isn't ready to become a Chunin. You do. Now take this paper. Sasuke lifted the paper up and the reaction was almost instantaneous. The paper wrinkled till it looked ancient and burst into a brilliant flame that continued to burn for some time. Well then, it appears you have an affinity for fire and lightning. Excellent. Hey. Mullet sensei, I thought you were going to teach me Taijutsu, you know. Why do I need to do this paper test thing? Katana Kage pushed the paper forward again, with a more resolute face this time. With your lack of training in certain basics and mastery of high-level jutsus, simple Taijutsu is the wrong way to go with such a short time left. I shall teach you ninjutsu, close combat that incorporates ninjutsu in the attack. I shall also train you in the use of a weapon that best suits your elemental affinity. Now let's get on with this. Naruto held the paper tightly and waited for it to react. Suddenly, the paper fell apart. Ah, a wind affinity. Very good, I have just the weight. Katana Kage and Naruto looked again as the paper then went on to wrinkle. Lightning nature. It's a bit delayed, which suggests it's perhaps only developing now that you're learning Iryo Ninjutsu. Naruto gave him a confused look. Why would me learning something affect my affinity? Katana Kage picked up the pieces of paper and scrunched it in his hand. There is always the potential to learn different elements even without having an affinity, but an affinity can change with our bodies too. Iryo ninjutsu deals with the body, and the body doesn't just have chakra flowing around it. There's also electrical signals coming from the brain. You were clearly born with a wind affinity, but your new experiences with this difficult area of ninjutsu has forced your body to adapt. Naruto nodded in understanding. I see. So what are you going to train me in? Swords. Staves. Katana Kage stood and brought down an ornate box. It was decorated with wind iconography. He opened the box to reveal 2 black Tesson, iron fans. Fans. I'm going to beat Neji with little fans. That Suna Kunoichi at least had a giant one, but these. Katana Kage picked one of them and flung it across the room towards a training dummy. The Tesson sliced through the dummy and lodged itself 6 inches into the stone wall. After retrieving it, Katana Kage handed them both to an awed Naruto. I found these Tesson on the battlefield during the Third Shinobi War. There's no record of them, so we named them Swirl and Swoop. They are made from a steel that never dulls and never misses. Tesson Jutsu greatly complements wind-style jutsus. You will be able to channel wind chakra into your attacks. The speed and sharpness will increase at least tenfold. They began training, and once Naruto got over his reluctance towards using weapons that looked so flimsy, he found he had a natural talent for Tesson Jutsu. So you fought in the Third Shinobi War, Mullet-sensei. Why aren't you a jonin, you know? Katana Kage surged forward and floored his student. I will not talk about it until you have fought in a real battle. You will not understand what I have experienced until then. Naruto looked at his sensei, and it was a look he had seen in his teammates during the mission to the Land of Waves, something he had felt too. Someone you knew died. A comrade. Katana Kage looked at him in shock. That someone so young could see the pain in others. Naruto sat himself back up. It was a mission in the Land of Waves. We walked into a fight way above our rank, you know. Zabuza and his student, a boy with special abilities called Haku. Haku was better than any of us, and he managed to skewer Sasuke with a ton of senbon. I thought he was dead. I knew from then on that we could die during a mission, that the life of a ninja was dangerous. It probably doesn't compare to what you must have seen, you know, but I think I get why you wouldn't want to do it anymore. You can't bear to see your comrades die, but you still want to help, so you make stuff that can protect them. The Kage didn't get the chance to reply because that was when Tenten appeared. Naruto-kun. We need to get going if you want to reach your interview on time. Grab a shower and I'll pack your things. Naruto nodded and ran out. The young Kunoichi collected the Tesson Jutsu scrolls and put them in Naruto's bag with Swirl and Swoop and waved goodbye to her dad before running out. The weapons master of Konoha sat down and sobbed. How could this child have gone through so much by his age that he could empathize with a shell-shocked former Anbu? He had removed himself from the affairs of other ninja for nearly 20 years after the death of his first wife. His second wife ran a small smithy, and when he started working there he soon turned it into what it was today. He kept his former comrades safe and provided for his family, but the hurt remained. The loss of Mai had nearly killed him. There was barely anything left of him when he met Hana. Naruto wanted to be Hokage, and Katana Kage believed he would. He was his father's son. At the Konoha Medical Center, the Iryo-nin Maitate was again looking at Rock Lee's lab results. His body was a mess. It seemed most of his bones had been broken at some time or another, and the strain of opening his chakra gates had shaken his old injuries open. All of this combined with the damage done by a partial Sabaku Kaiu had destroyed this young man. That this boy was recovering at all was a miracle. He desperately wanted something to show to Might Guy that would give him hope. It had broken Maitate's heart to see a man he had seen as a role model for pushing yourself to succeed just sitting outside a room for days on end. Maitate-sensei. Maitate turned to the source of the voice to see his old assistant. When he had just started at the center, a young girl had started to follow him around. Her name was Tenten. She said she wanted to be a splendid kunoichi like Tsunade. But it had become apparent that she had no ability when it came to Iryo ninjutsu, and she had stopped coming not long after. Earlier that day she had surprised him with a visit and a request. She had a friend in the Chunin exams who had little to no money and had been learning Iryo ninjutsu and Fuinjutsu. From what she had said, he had real talent. He smiled. Tenten, it's good to see you so soon after your last visit. Have you brought this potential staff member? She nodded and brought his attention to an orange-garbed blonde. His hit-eye was tied around his neck, his cheeks had markings like whiskers, and he had a diamond fixed to his forehead. Uzumaki. Naruto's appearance had changed since he had last seen him. Uzumaki, I must be frank with you. From what I have seen, you can't possibly be the same person Tenten was telling me about. In your fight with Inuzuka you showed poor chakra control and won through luck. Tenten pulled Maitate to face her. Maitate-sensei, Naruto-kun has been training non-stop and used Shosen Jutsu perfectly. Maitate knew Tenten wasn't in the habit of lying, so decided to give her the benefit of the doubt for this. Alright then, Naruto, you're a member of Team 7, right? What has Haddock-san taught you? Naruto seemed uncomfortable at this. 3 walking. Maitate motioned for him to continue. That's it. Maitate dropped his files. What? But he's had you for 6 months. He nominated your team for the Chunin exams. Have you learned nothing else? Naruto nodded. I met a ninja called Jiraiya who taught me water walking. Then there was a ninja called Shimura who gave me the Uzumaki clan scrolls and I started working through them by myself and today I started learning Tesson jutsu with Tenchan's father. According to the chakra paper test, I have an affinity for wind and lightning. Tate was stunned. If Tenten and Naruto were both telling the truth, then Naruto was a self-taught Iryo ninjutsu prodigy. And the names he had mentioned. Jiraiya was the legendary Toad Sage, and yet he had apparently walked away from being this genin's mentor. The second name gave him further pause. Shimura Danzo was a conservative man and a powerful ninja with a long history of fighting for Konoha from the shadows. Out of all the ninja Naruto had met, it was Danzo that had given the boy a chance to flourish. I can put you on the rota for general medical assistance, bedside manner, a bit of paperwork and cataloging stock. I'll give you some exercises to work on, and if by the end of the week I'm satisfied, I'll move you into a nursing position until we can properly put you into the medical program, which would probably be after the Chunin exams. Tate took out a pen and wrote on a piece of paper. This will be your hourly wage, and if you want to start as soon as I could do with. He was interrupted by a yell from the blonde genin. This much an hour? Give a 2-hour shift and that's more than I'd make in one mission. Tenten and Tate shared a look. Iryo Nin's salary was quite comfortable, but for those just starting it was worse than genin mission pay, a way of weeding out those who weren't committed to the level of study Iryo ninjutsu required. If this rate of pay was better in Naruto's eyes, then someone had been taking most of Naruto's pay. Alright, things to do you know. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Suddenly there was a small fleet of Uzumakis in the corridor. The original stepped forward. Alright guys, you lot go to the training grounds, you guys go home and work on Tate-sensei's jutsu exercises. The rest of us are gonna work here the rest of the day. Tate-sensei, just point us where you need us, you know. Tate felt a cold sweat coming down the back of his neck. What had he agreed to? Tate desperately tried to pull the files from his pupil, Naruto. These are Lee's personal files. You aren't authorized to read them. Naruto pulled again. How am I supposed to fix him if you won't show me what's wrong? Idiot. I'm supposed to fix him. You're not an official Iryo nin yet. Stop pretending you are. Naruto hadn't needed a week to prepare for his test, he'd completed them all before the end of his second shift. He had even managed to efficiently coordinate all his clones across the entire medical center. Tate was ready to believe that he would go down in history as the man who trained the greatest Iryo nin in history. The only problem was that Naruto was very eager to reach the next level. He had taken to wearing an Iryo nin uniform, beige shoes and trousers, beige high-collared long coat and a beige bandana. He had customized it with an orange sash wrapped around his waist and the Uzumaki clan crest decorating the shoulders and back. Naruto had managed to get a copy of Lee file in the end and was studying it at Ichiraku Ramen when he saw a familiar face walk by. Shikamaru. Hey. Wanna have some ramen with me? The lazy genin walked over to his friend to see if he could get a free meal. It would be a bother to pay for a meal. I've been invited to Naruto. Naruto shook his head. It's fine Shika, I'm making good money now, I can definitely pay for you know. Shikamaru noticed a coat from the medical center and the folder Naruto was looking at was clearly also from the medical center. He sat down next to his old pranking friend and asked him. Naruto, why does it look like you're studying to be an Iryo nin? Naruto handed Shikamaru a bowl of ramen. Because I am. I'm actually already an unofficial Iryo nin at the moment. They aren't bringing anyone onto the program until after the Chunin exams are finished, but I finished the basic medical staff training and I've been helping with various treatments too. Right now I'm trying to see if there's anything the others missed about Caterpillar Brow's prognosis. I think there might be a way if we could just get his chakra working harder, you know. Shikamaru didn't know that, he also didn't know what had happened to his friend. He had gone from a rough and tumble prankster to a cheerful and ambitious doctor. Naruto, you do know we've got the Chunin exams coming soon. And you said you were gonna wipe the floor with Hyuga freaking Neji. How's performing surgery going to make you able to beat a Juken prodigy? It would be such a bother if after all that noise you went and failed. Naruto lifted a piece of wood and ran his hand over it in a pattern. Letters began to appear, carved into the wood. Intense situations gives birth to rapid growth. Iryo ninjutsu requires mega accuracy you know. I now have much better control over my chakra and I have come up with a number of ways to beat an opponent. I've also been training with Tenten's dad. He says I've made serious progress. I'll be more than ready to face Neji. Shikamaru didn't get it. He just wanted to live an ordinary life and do as little as possible, get married and have some kids then retire early so he can spend his days looking at clouds and playing shogi. Why do you want to work so hard? It's such a bother. Naruto shook his head and ordered some more ramen. You don't get it Shika. You work hard now and get to the highest level of your field, then you can get what you want. At the medical center, the best Iryo nin get their pick of cases. They can get away with one a month if they are that good. Shikamaru hadn't thought of that. Low-level ninja don't really get the option to have their pick of missions like the top-tier ones. The jobs would obviously be harder and bothersome, but the level of time off he could get this changed things. Maybe Asuma-sensei was still in the mood for training. Hey Shika, do you wanna drop in and see Caterpillar Brows tomorrow? Maybe he can convince you to not be such a lazy ass. He grinned, his way of convincing people to do what he wants. He sighed, it would be too much of a bother to start seriously training now, and it might be nice to see if this Lee guy had any training pointers he could use. They entered Lee's room to find the red-headed boy from Sunagakure standing over their fellow Konoha genin, his sand swirling over the bed like a serpent preparing to strike. What do you think you're doing? Naruto yelled as the redhead turned. I was trying to kill him. He made to approach them but found himself frozen in place. He looked down to see his shadow being touched by another shadow. Shikamaru held the redhead in Kagame no Jutsu. Why is there a need for you to do that? You already beat him, what is your grudge with a crippled genin? Shikamaru found himself worrying, the redhead had been utterly calm despite their interruption and despite his paralysis. Could he still manipulate his sands? Were his teammates nearby and watching? This situation was fast becoming less bothersome and more dangerous. I have no grudge. Both Konoha genin looked at the redhead in shock. I'm going to kill him just because I want to kill him. They entered Lee's room to find the red-headed boy from Sunagakure standing over their fellow Konoha genin, his sand swirling over the bed like a serpent preparing to strike. What do you think you're doing? Naruto yelled as the redhead turned. I was trying to kill him. He made to approach them but found himself frozen in place. He looked down to see his shadow being touched by another shadow. Shikamaru held the redhead in Kagame no Jutsu. Why is there a need for you to do that? You already beat him, what is your grudge with a crippled genin? Shikamaru found himself worrying, the redhead had been utterly calm despite their interruption and despite his paralysis. Could he still manipulate his sands? Were his teammates nearby and watching? This situation was fast becoming less bothersome and more dangerous. I have no grudge. Both Konoha genin looked at the redhead in shock. I'm going to kill him just because I want to kill him. What the hell? You selfish prick. You think you can people on a whim? What kind of spoilt brat are you? Naruto raged from his position stood next to Shikamaru as they tried to stare down the visiting ninja from Sunagakure. Shikamaru tried to think. This guy is acting far too calm about everything. And he's dangerous. I don't know what kind of training Naruto has been getting, but going from my own ability and what I know, if we fight now we'll be killed. Naruto tapped Shikamaru's shoulder and nodded for him to move them to Lee. With Kagame in effect, Gaara was forced to walk round and soon they were stood where each other had been. The sand still lingered over Lee's body. If you get in my way I'll kill you too. Gaara's expression didn't change. Oh, yeah? Naruto's hand tapped a nearby table and a seal popped into the air. That was my personal alarm seal. All my cages have been alerted and they'll inform the medical staff and all the ninja in the area. Do you really think you can get away with killing 3 ninja before someone shows up? Shikamaru shivered. When did Naruto learn to create such a useful jutsu? Naruto. Stop provoking this guy, his strength is monstrous. Naruto snorted, causing both Shikamaru and Gaara to stare at the genin with confusion. I've got a real monster in me, I won't lose to a no-brows creep like you. Naruto grinned, not with a prankster's glee like Shikamaru had seen so often. This grin was one of confidence one's abilities. Heh, with his blonde hair and his medical center long coat Naruto looked a lot like the pictures of the Yondaime Hokage. Gaara looked pensive, a monster, huh? Then it's the same for me. The 2 Konoha genin looked surprised. On my father, the Kazukiyage's orders I was infused with a living incarnation of sand, Shukaku. I killed the one I would have called mother on the day I was born. I was born a monster. Shukaku. The name vibrated in the mind of the orange genin. Shukaku isn't a sand spirit Naruto. He's a weak-ass tailed beast and the whiniest relative possible. Don't let him take control of the brat Naruto. His voice grates. Naruto did his best to hide his shock. He's like me. Shikamaru forced a snort. With any luck, a show of bravado will make him look less scared. A possession jutsu at birth. Is that something a parent does? What a strange expression of love. Love? Gaara snorted at the word derisively. Don't judge me with your measuring stick. He took a moment to move the sand around them threateningly. Family. Let me tell you something about my family. They're just pieces of rancid meat swimming around me with hatred and murderous intent. Killing my mother proved my power, showed them I could be Sunagakure's masterpiece weapon. My father, the Kazukiyage, taught me the shinobi secrets and spoiled me, let me do as I pleased. I thought that was love until Naruto and Shikamaru pressed Gaara to continue. Until what? Gaara grinned as his eyes increased in size and the blood vessels became visible, making the previously emotionless ninja look unhinged. Until I was 6 years old, whereupon he decided to send assassins every day to kill me. Gaara continued to smile his disturbing smile. The village realized how dangerous I was and began to fear me. My father saw me as soon as trump card in a battle, but realized I was a very dangerous being. To the village I am a constant reminder of their violent past that they wished would disappear. Suddenly dynamic entry. A green streak burst through the door and slammed into the red-haired ninja. Mido Guy held Gaara pinned to the ground on his belly. What is the meaning of these hijinks in this room while my precious subordinate is convalescing? Shikamaru grimaced, Guy clearly knew what was happening. He must have got Naruto's alarm. Gaara moved and faced the two genin again. Surrounded by hatred I began to wonder why I existed, why I lived. I couldn't think of anything. But if one lives one needs a reason. Otherwise you're no better than the dead. Shikamaru and Guy looked confused. What? Naruto stared at the Suna weapon and felt as though he was looking into a mirror. He's like me. Like us. The fox stirred. We've lived alone and surrounded by hatred. We strive to find recognition, a reason to live. When Iruka-sensei acknowledged me I got my reason and the pain of loneliness didn't hurt as much. This poor fellow ninja. He hasn't had that. He only found a reason to exist by killing others. I felt alive when my pranks got me attention, any attention. He only felt alive by ending lives. We are so alike, yet it's like we're from totally different worlds. Gaara concentrated his sand and pushed. Guy ended up against the wall, still battle ready. Let me feel alive again then. Gaara raved. Let me kill you. Come. Naruto walked over to him. Shikamaru began to sweat. Guy had undone the Kagemain, and there was no way the young Nara clan member could call up the chakra to do it again. Whatever Naruto did, Shikamaru couldn't back him up. Naruto laid his hand on Gaara's shoulder. Hello Gaara, I'm Uzumaki Naruto. I'm going to heal the damage you've inflicted on caterpillar brows, and I'm going to heal your broken heart so that the love you feel won't just be a tattoo on your head. Gaara's hand crumbled as the words unsettled the redhead. He suddenly felt himself being lifted. I look forward to fighting you. Naruto then threw him out the window. What do you mean that wasn't an alarm? Shikamaru screamed. The window had been repaired and Guy was performing an unusual prayer at Lee's bedside. Sending healing vibes as the unusual ninja said. Naruto smirked. The seal cancelled all my cages. The jutsu spreads my chakra across them all so by cancelling it, I would be facing no brows at full power. Do you not remember the patrol rotas we copied for our pranks? Jonin and Chunin that are on duty aren't anywhere near the medical center at this time of day. I was bluffing, you know. Shikamaru couldn't believe what he was hearing. Naruto gave Shikamaru's arm a squeeze. It worked out fine Shika. Do you want to get some ramen? Shikamaru blushed. I have to go. I have training to do. Last week before the exams right. He made a hasty exit leaving a bewildered Naruto. Shikamaru took a deep breath. He was a slacker at heart and had always planned a life of small effort, followed by a plain woman for marriage, children and a quick retirement. He had always thought women were tiresome and annoying, but he also knew he was reaching an age where he was going to start noticing people. He had thought that he would start seeing women as less of a bother, but that hadn't changed. His teammate was proof of that. He knew he was pretty smart, but there had been one possibility he hadn't thought of. Naruto. I finished his prayer and turned towards the orange genin. I was talking to Tenten the other day and she told me something interesting about you. Naruto wasn't sure if Guy was upset or not and decided he couldn't back out of the coming conversation. I made a promise and I'm going to keep it. He again made the nice guy pose. I will give it my all and heal all of Team Guy. I will save Neji from his darkness and I will find a way to get Lee back to tip-top condition. Guy welled up and pulled Naruto into a hug. Ooh. Naruto. I never realized Lee had made such close friends that they would want to help so much. Guy bawled out some more things, but Naruto couldn't quite understand everything. Something about flames, youth and springtime. Guy finally collected himself and handed a parcel to Naruto. As a token of my gratitude take this, it should help greatly with your training. Naruto nodded and left Guy to continue his prayers. Danzo Shimura felt his whole body clench in agony and fell from his chair. Trouble, Danzo-san. A voice croaked from the shadows. A pale man with long jet black hair emerged and took the fallen root leader's seat. Are my enhancements troubling you? Danzo snorted. He was well aware of Orochimaru's failsafe. A special genjutsu placed in the skin. If the snake Sannin wanted he could kill Danzo on a whim. Are the arrangements made? Danzo sat up. I have withdrawn all root members. They believe it is an important mission. When you attack you will have only Konoha's regular forces and Sarutobi's Anbu to face. Bile rose in his throat as he toadied to the whims of a traitor. You hate me don't you Danzo? Danzo blinked. I know and I understand, you old warhick. I betrayed Konoha. Pa. I just wanted to learn the secrets of immortality. The fact remains that you needed me to give you your enhancement, so you have to accept my price. Atogakure and Sunagakure will invade and I will collect my new samples. Then Atogakure will pull out and leave you to return like big damn heroes. You'll no doubt become the next Hokage, and anything you want will be done by the council that will see you were right all along about keeping vigilant. The Kazekage is already dead, and they won't find out until I'm already gone. The plan is perfect, Danzo. Danzo stood up, his face gray. Did you have anything else to say, or did you just want to see me sprawl on the ground? Orochimaru chuckled and moved over to the door. Pleasure doing business with you, Goddamn Hokage. Hahaha. He sank into the ground as if swallowed by the shadows themselves. The Warhawk of Konoha went back to his desk and reached for his secret drawer. Imported whiskey. His other secret vice, after ramen at Ichiraku, was a sizable drink of Glenfiddich. As the drink burned its way down his throat, he thought of his last visit to Ichiraku. Naruto, had I only shared ramen with you sooner. Naruto gasped. Tenten-chan. It's so tight. I thought you said you'd done this before, you know. The Konoha Kunoichi grunted with effort. She'd only done this once before and had forgotten how hard it had been. Just hold it together, Naruto-kun, I'm almost done. She took a deep breath and moved closer. With a great sigh of relief she said, done. Naruto looked in the mirror and the outfit that Tenten had given him. It was a smart shirt, trousers and bow tie. I'm not sure about this, Ten-chan, it's not very functional, you know. I can barely breathe here. Tenten looked hurt. But Naruto-kun, you need a new outfit after what happened to your other outfit. It needed an update anyway. Plus, bodies are cool. It makes you look like a proper doctor. Naruto shook his head, his eyes squinting and a frown on his face. Nah, not for a ninja. What was wrong with my old outfit? Tenten picked up the remains. Who knew that practicing fire diversion would lead to burning down half of the dojo? Naruto's wind ninjutsu training had really paid off. His natural affinity and his own adaptability had led to some interesting new techniques developed on the fly. And his Tesson jutsu, when combined with his ninjutsu, had gotten to the point where Katana Kage had had to go all out. Tenten had never known that her father used torta summons. It's orange, Naruto. Bright, eye-burning orange. Not the stealthiest color choice. Naruto sniffed. I wear orange because it's my favorite color. And I want people to see me, Ten-chan. At this, Naruto began to look serious again. Tenten moved over to him and undid his bow tie. Naruto, why does everyone seem to hate you? Naruto looked surprised. The adults mutter about you and all the other people our age said they do it because their parents did it. I don't understand it. And another thing, you said you could fight Neji-kun even without my father's training, but I can't see how. Naruto chuckled, causing Tenten to look at him curiously. Set up the dummies downstairs and I'll show you what I was talking about. I just need to change into something more comfortable. Tenten looked at his backpack and she felt a shiver run down her spine. Not you too, Naruto. I know Guy-sensei says that it helps with training, but she didn't get to finish as he whipped out the green spandex jumpsuit and started grinning like a madman. How about a bet, Ten-chan? If I can impress you while wearing this, you have to wear yours for training and eating ramen with me. If I don't, then I'll tell you why everyone hates me. He walked over to the Kunoichi and held a hand out. Deal. Tenten decided this was a sure bet. Having worked with Guy-sensei and Lee-kun for so long, there was no way she could be impressed with that outfit. She took Naruto's hand. Deal. On the other side of Konoha, Konoha's sublime green beast of prey felt a warm tingle. Someone is donning a wondrous green jumpsuit. The Taijutsu master was leaving his favorite non-training establishment, the Curry Cinema. It was a new addition to Konoha, a Bollywood cinema that doubled as a curry house. It combined his favorite meal with movies of sweeping emotion. The day's film was a special run of Three Idiots. Funsuk Wangdu is right, one should follow excellence, not success, as success will come if excellence is followed. I shall no longer aim to meet my goals, I shall surpass them. If I say I will do 1,000 laps of Konoha, I will aim to surpass it rather than stop when I reach it. Haha. He felt the fires of youth burning hotter than ever within his belly. As he moved to begin, he ran straight into a passerby. Oh, I am so sorry, sir. I wasn't looking where I was go. He trailed off as the face of the man he hit came into view. His tanned skin, his eyes squinting, almost closed. His brown hair still had its widow's peak, but while it was once shaved close, was now a long mullet. The sage green bomber jacket hung on his shoulders while he wore a sleeveless green jumpsuit. Sensei. Katana Kage-sensei, is it truly you? It's been a while, boy-kun. Has Ningam grown much since we last met? Katana Kage nodded to the sweating jonin. He pulled out a cigarette and lit it. After taking a long puff and realizing his former student wasn't going to be in a state to talk for a time, he wrapped an arm around Guy and pulled him along with him. How about a bit of sightseeing? It's been a while since I have looked over Konoha from the Hokage Mountain. Asuma-sensei. Can I talk to you about something? The Team 10 leader turned to Shikamaru and nodded. Questions of his own began to form in his own mind as he led his pupil to a bench. In the past few days, his normally lazy student had become obsessed with training. They had made great progress with Kage Kubishibari no Jutsu, and his stamina training was going at a good pace. What is troubling you, Shikamaru-kun? I have noticed a change in you, it's not unwelcome, I'm rather glad you've started taking training seriously. Shikamaru shifted uncomfortably, Asuma had never seen his student look so uncomfortable. I have started noticing someone. It's not something I expected, I find it bothersome. Asuma leaned forward, gesturing for him to continue. You know about my plan. A boring life followed by a marriage of convenience, a few kids and an early retirement. This attraction would upset that plan. And they put forward an interesting point, higher ranks can be more selective. If I'm an elite jonin, then chances are they would only use me for a few important missions. Less work, which works for me. What should I do? Asuma-sensei crossed his arms. His student had used person and they. Gender-neutral terms meant it was a boy. A change in attitude, going from his research on the other teams means Uzumaki. He had seen the boy working at the medical center and had heard about his rapid growth. It all added up. Certainly, there weren't any gay couples at the time, but it was well known that the Nidaime Hokage had preferred the company of men but never married. It had been a long time ago, so perhaps it wasn't as well known as he thought. Perhaps Shikamaru was thinking about needing an heir for the Nara clan. Whatever the case, he really was too young to be dealing with such matters. Nara Shikamaru may be a genius genin, but he was still only 13. Shikamaru, you are 13. Sexuality is a difficult thing to discuss at any time in life, and it can take years for some people to know what they're looking for. You shouldn't try to stick to a label to yourself until you have some more experience. My advice is to wait. Spend some more time with Naruto, and if something happens, it happens. Shikamaru blinked. Asuma smiled at the fact he could catch his student. He then began to lament that they weren't playing shogi, he would definitely have won with his student so distracted. In the basement dojo of Tenten's home, the brunette had set up the room as Naruto had asked, level 10 Fuinjutsu exercise. Her father had helped her create an assault course that went through numerous levels. She had herself reached level 4 and had not yet mastered it. Level 10 was Jounin level, according to her father. Naruto stood waiting. Tenten moved back from the course. Are you sure about this, Naruto? Naruto nodded. Yeah, I'm ready. Let's go. At the Hokage's office, Hiruzen was staring out the window when a Chunin entered. Lord Hokage. Shimura Danzo has left Konoha. He left a letter saying he was going on a sabbatical, and he also left a message to put his financial resources on Uzumaki Naruto to win. The Hokage nodded and accepted the letters before sending the Chunin away. So, Orochimaru was going to be observing the Chunin exams. The Hokage mused to himself what Danzo had told him. In exchange for the power to combat and hold the nine-tailed fox within himself, the Warhawk of Konoha had made a deal with Hiruzen, old pupil. The price was to not interfere in an attack on the village. From Danzo and Kakashi's reports, Hiruzen concluded that the Snake Sannin was looking for research materials and had something special planned for the young Uchiha. I will have to prepare then for my final battle with one who was once my most treasured pupil. Tenten didn't know what to say, the walls of the dojo were a mess. She had never seen such destruction. Naruto turned to her and grinned. I can only hold it for a short time, you know. I think 30 seconds to a minute depending on what Fuinjutsu I'm dealing with, but you see what I mean. She looked at the orange genin and noticed something strange. Is it meant to affect your hair too? The boy looked confused, so she continued. Your hair is longer than it was when you started, and during your hair looked almost. She shook her head, had to be her imagination. Something else, the way you moved was like. Naruto put his hands up. I know, I was surprised when I learned about a shared heritage. I don't think they remember, but I think it might be fun to remind them. Naruto moved to collect up all the weapons and repairing the damage, and Tenten joined him. I have the nine-tailed fox sealed in me. That's why everyone hates me. Tenten dropped the bundle of kunai she was holding. What? Naruto fiddled with the jumpsuit till he managed to peel the torso part down. She watched as his bare stomach slowly became decorated with a large seal on it. The Yondaime Hokage didn't kill the fox, he instead sealed him in a newborn baby. The Sandaime Hokage made it against the law or the adults to tell anyone, even me, about it. But people were seeing me as the fox that killed all their friends and comrades instead of the boy that the fox was imprisoned in. Naruto felt himself getting pulled into a hug. Wow. Thank you for telling me. I know you didn't have to, and I understand why you'd be hesitant. They stayed that way for a while until Tenten pushed herself up. I've got another idea for a costume. We'll need to stop at a few shops, so we best get going now. With that, she took Naruto's hand and dragged him away with her, forgetting that he was wearing a jumpsuit and that he'd rolled it half down. On the Hokage mountain, Mido Guy finally regained his capacity for conversation. You've been training, Naruto-kun, haven't you? The Tanikaji folded his arms. And what if I have? He had chosen to wear the outfit he had often worn during his days as a ninja for this purpose. Guy felt himself feeling nervous in the presence of his old sensei who had, if anything, had become even more muscular in his long retirement. He wasn't receiving training anywhere else. I choked at this. What? But his team leader is my eternal rival, copy ninja Kakashi. Surely he would be training his pupil in the run-up to his match against Neji-kun. Katana Kage shook his head and Guy dropped to sit on a rock. I see. I had always thought Haddock was so very cool and hip the way he acted, but now I see he just didn't really care. I'm afraid I have failed you, sensei. I have not chosen my rival well. I thought that a student of your eternal rival would be best suited, but it would appear that was a mistake. Katana Kage punched his former student hard. Fool. You have chosen a nemesis, not a rival. He is your opposite and so you must overcome him. It is true that my rival was more of a friendly eternal rival, but that doesn't mean you have to do it the same as me. From what I hear, you have successfully created plans of attack specifically for fighting Sharingan. That is quite an achievement, boy-kun. Naruto came to my house and treated my daughter's injuries, so I offered to compensate him. Further, Yondaime listed my retirement as extended sick leave, owing to bereavement and trauma. I am technically still listed as a Konoha Jonin and Anbu general. Therefore I have broken no laws. I am relieved by your word, sensei. I should tell you, Orochimaru is in the village and we know he plans to invade soon, with help from Tsunagakure. You may want to prepare for a fight. Katana Kage smiled. I think I'll leave the fighting to Naruto. He is well on his way to surpassing his father. In the forests of Konoha, Neji had completed his final burst of training before the Chunin exams. All around him were broken and shattered blades, but for a perfect circle. Tenten gasped for breath, her body and her chakra resources exhausted. It's perfect, Neji. Neji didn't nod or acknowledge the comment. That's enough of a warm-up, let's go. He didn't wait for her to agree or catch, he merely moved with a single-minded resolve that conflicted with his style. The Hyuga's Juken used subtle, circular movements, while Neji was direct and unyielding. The Hyuga prodigy began to consider his matches. Uzumaki would be an easy win, he had no talent or skill to speak of. After that he would be facing either the last Uchiha or the red-haired ninja from Suna. Now that he had mastered Hakesho Kaiten, he knew it was superior to the Suna boy's sand, and he also knew Uchiha couldn't keep up with his speed. That left. Hey Neji, gasped Tenten once she caught up. Neji turned his head slightly to listen to his teammate. Neji, do you remember that present your uncle left when you joined Team Guy? Neji returned to staring forward, yes he remembered. He threw it in the trash. Well, I kept it and I gave it to someone. I hope you don't mind. Neji didn't over-reply, he merely added distance between them. The Kunoichi Genin sighed and hoped she had made the right decision. Mai Tate sat in his office staring at the report his apprentice assistant bane of his existence had left. Chakra stimulants harvested from plant life in the ruins of Uzushiogakure could be used for a number of melodies they had had trouble with recently, and with help from the Yamanaka clan, they should be able to cultivate it in their own village. He sighed, this treatment wouldn't completely heal Rock Lee, only improve the quality of life outside of being a ninja. The Iryonin still couldn't believe how much work the Genin had done in such a short time, without even being made an official candidate for the medical program. He pulled out a blank scroll and began to write out his recommendation for a mission to the ruined city of Naruto's clan to retrieve the plant, wanting to get it filed before he went to see how his protege did in his fight with his patient's teammate. Sarutobi Hiruzen was visiting the memorial alone, offering prayers to the fallen and for those who would soon follow. A number of his best Jonin and Anbu were on missions far away from the village, and by Danzo's estimates, the combined Itagakure and Tsunagakure forces outnumbered them 5-1. The only one of his students he was in contact with had disappeared with his student, he shook his head dismissively. He had seen Ms. Haruno the day after he had heard what had happened from Danzo. The Pinket was wearing an outfit almost exactly the same as the one Tsunade had worn at that age. He had asked around, Sakura had researched Jiraiya at the library along with Tsunade and then gone shopping. Clothes and perfume that had been Tsunade's preference. Everyone who knew Jiraiya knew his weakness for Tsunade, and the image of one from before their team fell apart probably tugged at his guilt over losing Orochimaru than his, as he'd refer to it, super pervert side. Shikamaru dodged another punch as he tried to focus, molding his chakra for the jutsu. Pushing himself to the limit at this late in the training period, he wasn't hoping for miracles, he only hoped he could at least master this jutsu before he had to get to the stadium. Sarutobi grinned as he pulled out his trench blades and made a wide swipe at his student's head. The shadow wielder barely ducked in time and kicked out, knocking a blade out of his sensei's left hand. Finally he felt it, he saw the shape and he saw his target and he sent it out. The Sand siblings Temari and Kankuro were not at ease. In fact, they were downright terrified. For the past week, after he came back from disappearing in the middle of the day, their little brother Gaara had radiated bloodlust. Even Baki's presence, representing the Kazukiyage's authority, wasn't enough to quell the rage radiating from the host of Shikaku. All they heard him say was Uzumaki Naruto, they couldn't figure out why he would say that name though. They'd met the Uzumaki boy and seen him in battle, he was useless. After checking the time, Kankuro did some last-minute tweaking on his puppets while Tamari polished her fan. As the Sandaime Hokage finished his thoughts, he turned to see a man he'd not seen in over 10 years. The customized bomber jacket worn over his shoulders, the sleeveless green jumpsuit and the long mullet. The student of his student. He smiled. Katana Kage, it has been a long time. His smile dropped when the often cheerful, often ridiculously so, man did not change his stern look. Katana Kage. The master weapons maker of Konohagakure pulled a scroll out of his jacket. I have long abided by the wishes of the Council of Elders, and I have had a great deal of work to do while raising my daughter. My wife and I are set on this, you will rescind Jiraiya's claim on Naruto as godfather and bestow them on me. He handed the scroll over. Shikamaru greedily ate as he tried to restore his chakra after the intense training. One of Choji's pills and an early trip to a shop for numerous bags of crisps had nearly done it, but he was now ravenous from the evaporation of body fat. Asuma-sensei was still out for the count, the jutsu had worked. You're acting really weird, Shikamaru, crunched Choji between mouthfuls of crisps. I thought training was a bother, but now you're training a lot. Shikamaru chuckled. I had a thought, Choji, if I get to a high enough level, then I get to do as much or as little as I want. If I train and work hard now, it means I get to work less later. Choji nodded and continued eating, not convinced. Shikamaru sighed and concentrated on keeping the image of performing the jutsu in his head. This is where we first became a team, thought Naruto as he enjoyed a cup of instant ramen on the training ground where Kakashi had given them the bell test. The lesson of self-sacrifice and teamwork had been a good one, but given he'd been abandoned by his entire team, he had to wonder if they had been learning the same lesson. And Naruto-kun. Naruto turned to see Hinata, hiding slightly behind one of the wooden posts. Hinata-chan. Are you alright now? The Hyuga girl blushed nervously but moved away from the post to stand nearer to the blonde genin. Then Naruto, what are you doing here? Isn't today the finals? She shifted from crossed arms to holding her arms behind her back as she waited for an answer. Naruto saw this and remembered the words she had used in her fight with Neji. Oh, so that's how it is. I'm just taking some time to think how far I've come since I became a genin. He set the finished cup down and turned back to focus on Hinata. Neji's your cousin, right? She nodded. He's strong, right? Another nod. I think something happened when he was younger, something to do with his dad dying, that's made him so angry. I'm going to find out. He nodded to Hinata and turned to leave. Naruto, wait. The blonde stopped and turned. When I fought him and why you cheered for me, I felt like I had become stronger. Even though I lost, I started to like myself more. Most people don't think I've changed, but I know now that I can change. I was able to tell people my Nindo, that I learned from you. Thank you. Naruto blushed. Though he would never admit it, he had enjoyed being the kind of person who helped people find their way in life. Like when he had helped Konohamaru and when he had helped Inari. Now Hinata. Hinata, after the exams I'm going to play ninja with Konohamaru and his friends, then help them with their homework. Would you like to join me? You're better at the written stuff than me, you know. Hinata turned a deep shade of red, so Naruto walked over to her and tapped her shoulder. I think you'd really enjoy it. Hinata nodded. As Naruto began to head off again, she called out to him again, Naruto. My cousin may be strong and may have never lost, but you have. Because you've failed in the past, you have the strength to get back up. I think that's what true strength is. Neji is strong, but you are very strong. It's what I always liked about you and Naruto. Naruto smiled. Thanks, Hinata, I was feeling depressed over stuff, but now, after all you've said, I feel great, you know. Hinata felt pride swell in her. Not only had she managed to keep a conversation going with Naruto, Shad made him feel better. You know, Hinata, about you, she moved closer to listen to him, I always thought you were a plain looing dark weirdo. Hinata felt herself crumple. And that's the kind of person I like best. I'm gonna go kick Neji's ass, so be sure to watch me. He left for the stadium and didn't notice that Hinata had frozen. Naruto looked around the stadium, looking for any sign of Sasuke. He couldn't believe Sasuke would be late for this, could he have picked up on Kakashi's tardiness? Hey kid, eyes up front. Need to face your future customers. The new proctor chewing a senbon, then turned to the people in the stadium. Ladies and gentlemen. Let's give a round of applause for our rising new stars. Hiba Inuzuka had resorted to prodding Hinata with a stick. Hinata. What the hell? We're going to miss Shino's fight. As the people of Konoha began entering the stadium for the final part of the Chunin exam, the Sandaime Hokage again peered at the scroll that Katana Kage had given him at the memorial monument. It was the same scroll he had been handed 14 years ago when he had returned to office. Adoption. Katana Kage had entered the council room with his wife, the civilian Hana, and demanded that the son of Minato and Kushina be placed in his care. While the Hyuga and the Nara clan leaders backed the proposal, both had served with the everlasting titan of the Hidden Leaf and knew he would be a good and watchful guardian, others had not been so sure. Shimura Danzo had questioned letting the boy grow up among the civilians, and the head of the civilian population, Haruno Ken, had strongly opposed having the demon living near him and his daughter. In the end they had turned down Katana Kage. He was no longer a ninja and could not be entrusted with guardianship of a child that like Naruto. Now though, Katana Kage had revealed he had never officially retired, merely on extended sick leave. Hiruzen took a long puff of his pipe. Naruto may well reach the position of Chunin on this day and would be officially recognized as a man of Konoha. However, he was also barely into his teens and had been without a family all his life. Perhaps giving Naruto this would be the right thing to do. Shikamaru watched the other genin arrive. He had managed to be early despite bottoming out his chakra reserves and then having to restore them earlier that day. He could see no sign of the Dosu guy who he had to fight. Who had beaten. That giant fan was gleaming from excellent care and showed no scratch from when it was used to crush Tenten. He saw her look at him and recognized the thoughtful look she gave him. She was sizing him up, analyzing. Could she be like me? He thought to himself. Could she be a tactical thinker who plans ahead of a fight before it even starts? There had been a reason for his earliness. He had mapped out the battlefield, looked for weaknesses in the ground, and checked the size of the shadows. He just hoped his match was at the right time of day. Hyuga Neji, Juken genius and member of the branch house of the Hyuga clan, stood proud in the center of the stadium, waiting for the finals to get underway. It looked like everyone had been training hard over the month, even the lazy Nara Shikamaru. He couldn't make up his mind with the future Nara clan leader. He often seemed to sleep through things, and yet when awake it was clear he had a keen intellect. He decided that he ought to keep an eye on him, to be sure. He continued his observations until he realized his opponent wasn't there. He turned to the entranceway and saw him. And immediately remembered what Tenten had said earlier about the present from Uncle Hiashi that he had thrown in the trash. Up in the seating area, Hyuga Hiashi gave a gasp at the sight of Naruto. Despite the obvious color change he recognized the traditional Hyuga garb he had intended for Neji to wear. Kiba and Yuzuka had resorted to prodding Hinata with a stick. Hinata. What the hell? We're going to miss Shino's fight. Hinata finally unfroze and Kiba relaxed. What happened Hinata-chan? Who was that blonde Hyuga you were talking to? Shikamaru stared agape at his transformed friend. Black hakama trousers with a light orange kimono orange. He wore a darker orange Mentsuki Haori over it, the spiral that adorned so many ninja garbs in Konoha was emblazoned where the Mon family crests were supposed to be. His obi sash was black with what appeared to be spiraling orange foxtails decorating it. Naruto's Hitai was tied onto the obi, leaving his forehead bare and showing the diamond that he had recently gained. He was no longer wearing the typical ninja sandals, he now had split-toed white tabi socks and Seta appeared to be two sticks tucked into the obi, but Shikamaru couldn't guess what they were. Something he recognized though was the Iryonai coat which the blonde genin was wearing on his shoulders. All in all, the dead last genin looked more. Naruto looked around the stadium, looking for any sign of Sasuke. He couldn't believe Sasuke would be late for this, could he have picked up on Kakashi's tardiness? Hey kid, eyes up front. Need to face your future customers. The new proctor chewing a senbon, then turned to the people in the stadium. Ladies and gentlemen. Let's give a round of applause for our rising new stars. Shiranui Genma, proctor for the final part of the exams, wasn't sure what to make of the blonde genin. He looked like a younger version of the Yondaime Hokage, wearing his confidence like his coat. He had seen the trainee Iryonin at work when he'd visited a friend at the medical center. The kid had been everywhere at once, totally focused on task. It was unreal that a genin, who hadn't even finished his Chunin exams, was fast becoming an Iryonin genius. The Hokage rose up and moved to the balcony while the Kazekage remained seated. Thanks everyone. For coming to the Konoha Chunin selection exam. There was a great applause. We will now start the main matches. Shikamaru gave a sigh of relief. It seemed Dosu had quit the exam, so he no longer had an extra match to fight. Which meant he just had. Aki, the leader of the Sand siblings on their invasion of Konoha mission, glared at Gaara. There was no sign of Uchiha Sasuke, and there was Gaara's disappearance not long before they were due to arrive that day. Could he really have done this? After I repeatedly told him not to attract attention. Okay guys, it's a different setting, but the rules are the same as before. You fight until one of you dies or acknowledges defeat. I'll step in if I think the fight's over. You got that? The assembled genin all gave the slightest of nods. This was serious. No joking or questions now. Alright, first match is Hyuga Neji vs Uzumaki Naruto. You two stay while the rest go to the waiting area. Hinata and Kiba were barely able to find a seat but were able to see as Neji and Naruto stepped forward to face each other. Above them, Ino and Choji were sat staring intently at the arena floor. Against someone like Neji, Naruto has no chance. Whispered the blonde florist while the pleasingly plump genin opened another bag of crisps. I don't know Ino-chan. Shikamaru has been different ever since he went for ramen with Naruto. Maybe Naruto is different too. I haven't seen him for a while and he looks really serious down there. A Chunin with brown hair combed to cover his right eye and another with spiky black hair started going over the odds. That blonde genin has a lot of luck, but that Hyuga kid. The other nodded, indeed. That Hyuga kid is too tough for just luck to carry you through. My money's on Hyuga. Hyuga. Hinata sat beside them, listened to the conversation and fumed. Rising up, Hinata turned to them. You're wrong. Naruto is really strong. Stronger than you realize. She was shocked, as was Kiba. In the past, Hinata had never stood up for herself like that. Kiba then heard whining coming from his shoulder. What is it, Akamaru? He turned and saw a hooded Anbu standing not far from where they were seated. An Anbu? What's going on? As they stood staring at each other, waiting for the call to begin, Hyuga Neji spoke in a sneering tone. You look like you have something to say. The blonde raised his hand into a fist, and Neji was reminded of the last time they had looked upon each other. I told you before, you're definitely going down. Neji looked at his opponent and activated the Byakugan. Naruto watched him as he adopted a fighting stance. The eyes of a person who totally believes in himself, there's no doubt in him. Neji watched as Naruto adopted a similar stance and stared into the blonde's eyes. The eyes of a person who totally believes in himself, there's no doubt in him. Hyuga Hiashi turned to his daughter. You said you had a strange doctor when you went to the medical center yesterday. The young heir to the Hyuga main family nodded. That's him. He kept talking about some plant he was having brought here for a medicinal treatment he'd come up with. He was able to reset my leg and used Shosen Jutsu. Not even a scar. He even did a cosmetic once-over of my older injuries, and Hiashi's face tensed. He wanted to know about our clan, he said it was for a history project. Sorry, father. Hiashi tensed for a moment but decided it was unlikely that the blonde boy could know anything about it of no matter. Hanabi. I want you to watch your cousin carefully, there isn't another Hyuga like Neji. Hanabi nodded. Yes, father. Now the first fight. Begin. A Chunin with brown hair combed to cover his right eye and another with spiky black hair started going over the odds. That blonde genin has a lot of luck, but that Hyuga kid. The other nodded, indeed. That Hyuga kid is too tough for just luck to carry you through. My money's on Hyuga. Hyuga. Hinata sat beside them, listened to the conversation and fumed. Rising up, Hinata turned to them. You're wrong. Naruto is really strong. Stronger than you realize. She was shocked, but not as shocked when a hand tapped her shoulder. Thanks, Hina-chan, boss down there will be glad to know that. The Kage Bunshin turned to the two Chunin. Hey, you feel like making a bet on this fight, then? I win, you have to pay my tab at Ichiraku Ramen. The two Chunin turned to each other and whispered before turning to face the Kage Bunshin. What if we win? We don't have any debts, and no non-clan genin would have anywhere near enough money to give us a decent jackpot. The whiskered Iryonin chuckled and the two Chunin moved closer. If you win, I will set you up with a medical plan that will cut your fees by 60% while receiving Anbu-level treatment. He smirked at the dropped jaws of the two Chunin. Anbu could show up any day, any hour and receive no questions medical treatment. And to receive that kind of access to medical treatment for only 40% of what they had to pay for Chunin level cover. Deal. Hyuga Hiashi turned to his daughter. You said you had a strange doctor when you went to the medical center yesterday. The young heir to the Hyuga main family nodded. That's him. He kept talking about some plant he was having brought here for a medicinal treatment he'd come up with. He was able to reset my leg and used Shosen Jutsu. Not even a scar. He even did a cosmetic once-over of my older injuries, and Hiashi's face tensed. He wanted to know about our clan, he said it was for a history project. Sorry, father. Hiashi tensed for a moment but decided it was unlikely that the blonde boy could know anything about it of no matter. Hanabi. I want you to watch your cousin carefully, there isn't another Hyuga like Neji. Hanabi nodded. Yes, father. Now the first fight. Begin. Neji flinched from the absence of movement. He had expected the blonde genin to charge at him the second the proctor made the call. But instead, Naruto had begun to slowly move around, circling him. No. He was moving closer. Neji decided to move in a similar fashion, though his steps were deliberate and spaced out, Naruto's steps were more like a shuffle. The young heir to the Hyuga main branch turned to her father. Father, is this all that Neji is going to do? She couldn't fathom what was going on. The two genin had merely been circling one another for the past half hour. Hiashi tensed. It is a sound strategy. They are focusing all their energy on each other, looking for an opening. Normally this would be a simple matter of waiting till one dropped their guard. However, if Neji-kun doesn't do something soon about that Uzumaki, it won't matter if his stamina is greater. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Suddenly, 4 exact clones of Naruto appeared and surged towards Neji. The Hyuga prodigy paused at this. The Kage Bunshin was a Jonin-level Kinjutsu from the Forbidden Scroll that had been stolen 6 months ago. The academy instructor Mizuki had been arrested for it, but it was said that he had manipulated a student to steal it for him. So, you are the moron who stole a scroll. Behind the 4 clones the original Naruto started. Yes, I heard about it. So you tried become stronger like that, huh? It won't do any good though, your fate is already set in stone. Tenten blinked in surprise. Was this Naruto's idea of a trump card? The Kage Bunshin would make it difficult for Neji to find the original, but Neji was a Juken prodigy, with taijutsu skills beyond anything Naruto could learn in a month. She turned to her father. What is Naruto thinking? The Tanikaji tensed, the Hyuga boy didn't see what was going on, and Naruto seemed in no hurry. Clearly that move wasn't going to be his first plan, simply a reserve. He remembered the promises his Slug Prince had made to Tenten. He is preparing to show us all his new path, his new Nindo. Tenten looked confused but returned to watch the match. The clones charged at once, weaving from different directions. The Hyuga didn't even move, the veins round his eyes just seemed to flex more. He leapt at the last moment and delivered a brutal kick to the face of one clone, while landing in a handstand on another. He spun and with an almighty crack the clone exploded just as the head appeared to leave the body, causing Naruto to wince and hold his neck as the memory invaded his mind. The last 2 clones were dispatched with a spin kick. Pathetic. To think you dream of being the Hokage. It's impossible for you to beat me with these all-seeing eyes. Talent is decided when we are born, our destiny is decided before we are even born. You have nothing to distinguish yourself from the worthless losers you stand up for except a goofy grin. Your fate is to lose to me. Here. Damn Hyuga and double damn those all-seeing eyes, thought Naruto as the phantom pain in his neck burned. He knew his backup could finish this fight here and now, but he needed to know more. He needed to know why Neji felt such pain that he needed to hurt Hina-chan the way he did. Why the hell do you get to decide things, huh? You think those eyes tell you everything you know? Growled the genin. Hyuga Neji sneered. So you think any shinobi can become the Hokage just by working hard? Kage is a title few shinobi are awarded. Think of our villages, a man who built a forest on a whim, another who could locate any enemy just by touching the ground, a genius who commands the Monkey King, and a man who could be everywhere at once, who defeated the 9-tailed demon fox. At this Naruto felt his tenant growl with contempt. Look at the reality around you. Only one destiny is shared by all that even a loser like you can achieve. Death. He still has that grudge against the main family. Why hasn't that boy activated his jutsu? What does he know about this situation? Hiashi couldn't understand what the Uzumaki boy was up to, but he was sure it couldn't be good. Another swarm of Kage Bunshin rushed at the Hyuga prodigy, 20 of them this time. Neji saw the one at the far back. The same strategy. What a fool. He rushed his way past the clones and pulled a kunai from one of them before leaping into the air to land right behind Naruto. It's over. The clones disappeared. Father, why is Naruto trying to use taijutsu? You were teaching him ninjutsu on account of the lack of time. Katana Kage shook his head at his daughter's question. Initially, yes. However, I then discovered that Naruto had mastered the Kage Bunshin no jutsu and could divide his training up among many. I taught him a martial art that I thought would help him understand Juken tactics better. In fact, he read up on it and decided to adapt his Nindo to include its teachings. Tenten turned to her father. What martial art? Judo. Another swarm of Kage Bunshin rushed at the Hyuga prodigy, 20 of them this time. Neji saw the one at the far back. The same strategy. What a fool. He rushed his way past the clones and pulled a kunai from one of them before leaping into the air to land right behind Naruto. It's over. The clones disappeared. Neji drove the kunai forward but fell forward when the kunai was suddenly smoke. 2 hands grabbed his arm. Neji. Neji was suddenly in the air and then slamming into the ground. A trap. Neji rolled away from his opponent and tried to regroup, but the orange genin was on him straight away. Neji attempted a kick, but it was grabbed, and Neji was swung by his own momentum into the air and then into the ground, face first. Held close together by the blonde genin, Neji struggled to break free. As long as we're this close, your all-seeing eye is pointless, and you don't have the room to try choking my chakra points. I can just keep throwing you into the ground until he didn't get to finish as Neji fixed his footing and then brought his stare to Naruto, radiating with Saki. The Kesho. Kaiten. Another swarm of Kage Bunshin rushed at the Hyuga prodigy, 20 of them this time. Neji saw the one at the far back. The same strategy. What a fool. He rushed his way past the clones and pulled a kunai from one of them before leaping into the air to land right behind Naruto. It's over. The clones disappeared. Father, why is Naruto trying to use taijutsu? You were teaching him ninjutsu on account of the lack of time. Katana Kage shook his head at his daughter's question. Initially, yes. However, I then discovered that Naruto had mastered the Kage Bunshin no jutsu and could divide his training up among many. I taught him a martial art that I thought would help him understand Juken tactics better. In fact, he read up on it and decided to adapt his Nindo to include its teachings. Tenten turned to her father. What martial art? Judo. Another swarm of Kage Bunshin rushed at the Hyuga prodigy, 20 of them this time. Neji saw the one at the far back. The same strategy. What a fool. He rushed his way past the clones and pulled a kunai from one of them before leaping into the air to land right behind Naruto. It's over. The clones disappeared. Neji drove the kunai forward but fell forward when the kunai was suddenly smoke. Two hands grabbed his arm. Seoinage. Neji was suddenly in the air and then slamming into the ground. A trap. Neji rolled away from his opponent and tried to regroup, but the orange genin was on him straight away. Neji attempted a kick, but it was grabbed and Neji was swung by his own momentum into the air and then into the ground, face first. Held close together by the blonde genin, Neji struggled to break free. As long as we're this close your all-seeing eye is pointless and you don't have the room to try choking my chakra points. I can just keep throwing you into the ground until he didn't get to finish as Neji fixed his footing and then brought his stare to Naruto, radiating with sake. The Kesho. Kaiten. Naruto couldn't hold his grip, it was as though Neji's skin was on fire. Neji span round and the fire began to surround him. Naruto pushed away, throwing stars appearing in his hands and flinging them to cover his retreat. The stars didn't pierce the armor and fell to the ground in a mass of shattered metal. Neji sneered at the 14-year-old genin. Did you think you had won with a couple of judo moves? The Ashi gave a start just as Hinata was shocked into a hacking cough and Hanabi leaned forward to watch the fight. They all shared the same thought. Hakesho Kaiten the heavenly spin. All the Hyuga clan members were shocked, Neji's Kunoichi teammate was all too familiar with his mastery of the clan technique. They had trained together for a long time to perfect it. With the Byakugan's almost 360 degrees of vision and their natural ability to direct chakra out of every part of their body allowed Neji to use the ultimate protective and defensive jutsu. So there's another who has an absolute defense to rival my own. Mused a red-haired Sunanin. Father, he can use your technique. Hanabi stated as they watched Naruto try to breach Neji's Kaiten, only to be flung across the arena. The Ashi nodded. Kaiten is the Hyuga main family's a special technique only passed on to the heirs to the Hyuga house. For Neji to have mastered that technique by himself, without instruction Hiashi went deep into thought, observing his brother's son. What a talent. To be this good. Naruto ran forward and prepared the hand gestures for Kage Bunshin, Neji began to spin again. A single clone appeared and ran forward. The clone leapt onto the beginning Kaiten and before he was flung away and destroyed, Naruto leapt onto his back to gain height. He pulled out a scroll and raised a hand. Kai. A mass of weapons of every shape and size appeared and all came crashing onto Neji. His barely formed Kaiten couldn't handle the onslaught and the Hyuga prodigy fell away, rolling away from the blades and hammers. The tide of metal came to an end and Neji looked up to find the blonde genin rushing him with a kunai in one hand and a hammer in another. In his confusion he could not fully avoid the attack as the blade pierced his arm and the hammer came on his forehead. Only his hit I-8 protected him from losing consciousness, though it did lead to the metal of the hit I-8 cutting him. Neji coughed up some blood before he started to sneer again. Not bad, but now you've entered the range of my Haki Rakujian show. He adopted a new stance as Naruto prepared for another attack. The Ashi Hyuga stood up in shock. That stance. Naruto's attack didn't land as Neji hit first. 2 strikes. 4 strikes. 8 strikes. 16 strikes. 32 strikes. 64 strikes. The blows were a blur as they landed all over the blonde genin's body. Finally, his boy exploded away from the Hyuga boy. Hinata and Kibble looked horrified. Tetsu and Izumo started adding up the profit they stood to make on their new medical care program. Hanabi's Byakugan flexed as she focused on the attack's effect. The Sandaime Hokage gripped the arms of his chair, leaving dents in the wood. Tenten and Katana Kage looked at each other worriedly, trying to discern why Naruto had put himself in such a position. The Ashi watched the blonde gasping for breath on the arena ground, then looked to his nephew. What incredible talent. He thought, for the great Hyuga blood to flow so strongly in one who can never claim the title of heir to the clan. Exam Proctor Genma moved closer to the battle. That should be about it. Neji walked over to Naruto. I have hit the 64 tenketsu of your body. You cannot stand, nor can you channel chakra. He watched while Naruto, still hunched and holding his torso, rolled onto his knees. Stay on your knees before a power you cannot defeat or change and accept your worthlessness. Just as I have. Having your dreams come true through hard work is an illusion. Is it painful? Accepting your role in life. Hinata fell from her seat in a coughing fit. When Kiba knelt down to help her up he found blood in her palm. And Naruto-kun she struggled to see across to where Naruto struggled to rise as her vision blackened. Do you really think that I, the last of my clan, would be defeated by the bootboy of the clan that served mine? Naruto looked up as he set one foot down, and then the other. He raised himself to full height to face his opponent who was now backing away in shock. What? Neji tripped on a stone and fell onto his rear. I am possible. What is he saying? How is he standing? I am in Uzumaki. The last of the clan who founded Uzushiogakure. Just as the Uchiha helped the Senju found Konohagakure, so too did the Hyuga help the Uzumaki found Uzushiogakure. Just as the Uchiha were Konoha's military police force, so too were the Hyuga the Uzushiogakure military police force. I am your lord, and if anyone is going to lose this fight it shall be you. Naruto took a resolute stance as he stared down his enemy. Good, he will get angry now. Now he will begin to tell me why he hates his own clan. Naruto pulled out the Tesson, swing and swoop, and took a beginning position. Yin seal. Kai. Father, is that all true? What is he? Hanabi couldn't believe what she was seeing. With that command, a second chakra network had appeared. It mapped the entire body, just like a normal network. However, there appeared to be more wires that collected around his forehead and his stomach. She tried to look closer at the network. It was an eerie orange-red color. She looked closer but fell back when it seemed to growl at her. What is he? Hiashi felt a cold sweat run down his neck. How had that boy learned about that? That information was only known by the oldest of clans, the Senju. When Uzushiogakure had fallen, the Hyugas petitioned the Sandaime Hokage for asylum. The Yin seal, the seal that had been used by the Shodai Hokage and his wife, the Lady Mito Uzumaki, to seal the nine-tailed fox within her. Somehow that boy has learned of his maternal lineage and found a way to use the demon's chakra. I don't know, Hanabi, I don't know. She was injured during the preliminaries, she said she was fine, but Kiba struggled to explain to the Anbu working on the unconscious Hyuga girl. He was panicking, feeling responsible for his teammate's condition. The Anbu gave a reassuring tilt of the head. The Iryonin that treated her merely missed a minor injury that hasn't healed properly. Just a simple bit of emergency surgery. I can do it right now actually, if you prefer. Kiba eyed his mysterious Samaritan. Just who are you? The Anbu turned to his work. No one suspicious if that's what you're thinking. As your superior I command you to answer my question. Naruto faced the Hyuga boy as he moved closer, still in an attack position. Why? Why did you mentally attack Hinata like that when she was trying so hard? The Hyuga charged and launched into Tenten. Naruto swung his Tesson, and a great gust swamped Neji. His perfect sphere of chakra lost form and he fell sprawling on the ground. Insulting Hinata, automatically deciding she was a loser. I don't care what the hell has happened with your clan, but people who call others losers like that are people I won't forgive. Neji pushed himself off the ground, picking stone out of cuts and grazes. Fine, I'll tell you. You've told me about a Hyuga past I didn't know about, so I'll tell you about their present that you don't know about. I'll tell you about the Hyuga clan's destiny of hatred. As your superior I command you to answer my question. Naruto faced the Hyuga boy as he moved closer, still in an attack position. Why? Why did you mentally attack Hinata like that when she was trying so hard? The Hyuga charged and launched into Tenten. Naruto swung his Tesson, and a great gust swamped Neji. His perfect sphere of chakra lost form and he fell sprawling on the ground. Insulting Hinata, automatically deciding she was a loser. I don't care what the hell has happened with your clan, but people who call others losers like that are people I won't forgive. Neji pushed himself off the ground, picking stone out of cuts and grazes. Fine, I'll tell you. You've told me about a Hyuga past I didn't know about, so I'll tell you about their present that you don't know about. I'll tell you about the Hyuga clan's destiny of hatred. The Ashi's eyes gave the barest flicker of emotion on his normally stern face. Not even his daughter noticed this. Hiashi moved closer to listen, wanting to know what was wrong with his nephew. It was truly as he thought. Kiba didn't notice anything of this as he was too busy watching the Anbu focusing before thrusting his hand upon Hinata's chest. Kiba was at a loss, his teammate had lost consciousness, and he was scared. The Anbu looked up. Don't worry, I'm a doctor. The main family of the Hyuga clan has a special ninjutsu that's been passed down for as long as any of us can remember. It's a Juinjutsu. A Juinjutsu? Questioned Naruto. Neji nodded. That's barbaric. The Uzumaki clan scrolls state that in Uzushiogakure any and all Juinjutsu were labeled Kinjutsu. The teaching and use of Juinjutsu was punishable with expulsion. Naruto felt rage boil in him. Neji's family used Juinjutsu on him. What one? And why? What a village that you speak of. But this is Konohagakure and no such measures exist. The mark of the Hyuga Soke no Juinjutsu represents a bird in a cage. It is the symbol of being tied down to an inescapable destiny. The Hyuga genin reached behind his head and undid the knot of his hit I-8. He let it drop from his head to reveal a large black mark that covered his entire forehead. It looked like a manji with hooks on either side of it. Naruto looked at the mark with a look of disbelief. That mark is. The Sandaime Hokage watched the fight with a grave expression. I can't believe that a clan in my village conducted themselves like this. How could I have been so blind? All of the main house either wear the hit I-8 around their neck or a clothing decoration or not at all, while the branch house have worn them on their forehead without fail. It was so obvious yet Tenten looked to be in great pain as she watched this. The two opponents facing each other were both people she had a bond with and she didn't know who she should be supporting. They both had a reason to fight that she understood, and she wanted them both to win, and yet in the past month she had felt a bond form when she and Naruto had been together. Not the bond that so many of her fellow kunoichi wanted to form with Uchiha Sasuke. No, her bond with Naruto was more like the bond she had with her parents. And yet she also had a bond with her teammate. She finally knew why her teammate had always seemed to carry so much pain in him. That he told her she might well have taken the information to her father. She could picture him laying siege to the Hyuga estate and squeezing Hiyashi's neck till his head exploded. Probably just as well that didn't happen, thought she did notice a fire of anger ignite in her father's eyes when Neji revealed the Juinjutsu. Hyuga Hiyashi closed his eyes as a wave of shame filled him. Hisashi, I have failed you and that boy, I recognize you now. Not as Uzumaki though. I recognize the chakra network in those eyes from last week. The little sneak thief. When I was 4, on the day of Lady Hinata's birthday, the Hyuga Soke no Juinjutsu was carved into my forehead. But most have remembered that day as the day a shinobi leader from Kumagakure, a village that Konohagakure had been in conflict with, came to the village. While I screamed in agony, being branded as an inferior specimen of the clan, the village was in celebration over the alliance treaty that was to take place. While everyone celebrated, one clan was absent. The Hyuga clan. From child to genin to chunin to jonin. Even the Anbu. All Hyuga clan members were in the clan estate for Lady Hinata's 3rd birthday. Because that's when we brand the branch members, the Hyuga heir's birthday present is a mass branding of the inferior stock. Neji reactivated his Byakugan. He watched as the orange-red chakra surged and hit against the Tenketsu spots he had blocked. It seemed to flow harder at one spot until the damage was undone and moved to the next. So that diamond was a seal. He must have set up that seal with a secondary chakra network, specifically for fighting Hyuga. He should be able to just fight with that network, but he wants to talk while he fixes himself. Maybe his chakra control for that network isn't as good. Neji maneuvered himself closer to his opponent. My father was there as well. Hyuga Hisashi. Lady Hinata's father, Hyuga Hiyashi, and my father, Hyuga Hisashi, were twin brothers. But Hiyashi was the firstborn and became a member of the main family, while my father, the second-born, became a member of the branch family. Hyuga Neji shook his head in derision. When the Hyuga clan's first daughter became 3, I was made a bird in a cage through their Juinjutsu as a member of the branch house of the clan. And with this Juinjutsu in place, a member of the main house, Neji thought back to that time, years ago, when he saw his uncle put his own brother through so much pain he passed out. With just a flick of a wrist. Never forget your duty. His father's words echo in his mind. But why? This seal can, with a secret hand seal, destroy the wearer's mind. It only disappears when they die, and it seals the ability of the Byakugan with it. There are many who would go to any length to get their hands on the Hyuga Keke Genkai. So, with this Juinjutsu, the branch house is allowed to live only to protect the main house. Any form of disobedience is prohibited by the main house. An advanced system, created to eternally protect the Byakugan of the Hyuga clan. Neji surged forward and launched his haki, but his arm suddenly jarred. Naruto had folded his Tesson and pincered his arm. Naruto applied more pressure and pulled Neji forward. He then delivered an uppercut to Neji's face. The double chakra network running through the orange genin at the time increased the power of the blow and fired him over 30 feet across the arena. Naruto tucked the Tesson back into the obi sash and walked over to Neji. It couldn't be that simple. A hatred of his clan based on a Juinjutsu? Understandable, but Neji was a genius genin, he could resent his position, but that shouldn't make him so full of hatred that he would nearly kill Hinata in a Chunin preliminary match. That Hinata didn't use the Juinjutsu should have told him something. You're an idiot, Neji-san. Do you hate Hina-chan just because you got branded on her birthday? That she, whose abilities pale in comparison to yours, will get to order you around? Do you not think it strange that a main house member couldn't just use the cage on you? He knelt down and whispered into Neji's ear as the Hyuga stood up. It's not that she wouldn't, she can't. The Hyuga elders are planning to have her demoted to the branch house. Now that they have Hanabi, a prodigy like you, they don't need a bumbling idiot like Hinata. Neji looked at the blonde in shock and pushed away. How? How would you know about something like it? Naruto smirked and flicked his arms. Twin tornadoes appeared and Neji rolled away. He turned and Naruto was stood directly in front of him. I'm the Gemini shadow you Hyuga have been talking about. The 2 chakra networks flexed as one and like a cannon, Naruto's fist drove into Neji's gut. In the week leading up to the Chunin exams finals, a strange phenomenon had been observed by many Hyuga on the Hyuga estate. A small shinobi completely covered in black had been seen on the grounds, specifically the Hyuga library. When they had tried to see his chakra to figure out who it was, they had been baffled by the fact the individual had 2 chakra networks circulating his body. And he was stronger, faster than an ordinary shinobi of his size. They hadn't brought it to the Hokage because they feared the double chakra network may have represented a flaw, a weakness developing in the all-seeing eye of the Hyuga. Neji coughed and wheezed as he pushed his aching body. His opponent was not what he had expected. The dead last loser that had vowed to beat him was now some sort of urban legend on the Hyuga estate. Capable of eluding shinobi whose job is to see through shadows. And then came the day that tainted my life and showed me the terrible thing that is destiny. The day my father was killed by the main house. Naruto gasped. Yes. One night, years ago. Lady Hinata was taken by an intruder. Lord Hiashi took care of it, the intruder was all in black and his face was covered. Can you guess who it was? Naruto shook his head and Hiashi's face became even sterner. It was the Kumagakure shinobi leader who had just signed the peace treaty. Obviously, the whole reason for the treaty was so that they could get close enough to steal a Hyuga with the Byakugan. But Kumagakure, with one of their leaders dead, on Konohagakure they wanted the corpse of Lord Hiashi. And Konohagakure agreed. Hanabi turned round and saw her father sink back into his seat with a weary expression. But father is alive in here. What happened then? The Sandaime Hokage sighed and fell back into his chair. The Hyuga clan are playing host to a great deal of drama right now and I always thought they were a bunch of stiff shirts. He turned to the Kazekage and fixed him with a glare. Normally I'd have to repeatedly tell him that I did not share his taste for testing the next generation with surprise assassination attempts. He's been almost completely silent. Could it be that he is or was averted by killing my father and sending him in place of a main house member? Neji began to laugh. Heh, to escape this horrid fate in this damnable cage, the only escape is death. They were twins, identical. Their strength, virtually the same, born first, born second, their destinies were decided by just that. Do you understand, Naruto? Your fate was decided the moment I became your opponent. No Fuinjutsu from your forgotten clan or Iryo ninjutsu from the medical center can change your fate. Naruto raised his fist and in a twirl Senbon appeared. Now I know the cause of your darkness, I can now treat it. Hyuga Neji, prepare yourself for a lesson in Naruto style Iryo Nindo. First, put your hit I-8 back on. Naruto pointed at it on the ground. Neji looked at his opponent confusedly. He saw the orange chakra fade and the diamond reappear on Naruto's forehead as the blonde genin walked over and picked up the black headband. What are you talking about? Neji asked Naruto as the blonde genin stood before him, holding the hit I-8 out to him. I tell you are destined to be defeated by me and you are concerned about wearing a headband. He pushed it back. Naruto pushed it back and onto Neji's chest. By wearing these, we recognize each other as fellow shinobi, as rivals in this exam striving to prove our worth in front of our allies, our comrades and people we don't know, people who couldn't give a rat's ass about whether we live or die. Sometimes, the only person that might care is an enemy. Neji swung his arms out and launched into his Katen. Naruto leapt into the air, riding the chakra and still holding the hit I-8. In his other hand, he pulled out the Tesson called Swoop and concentrated on the Katen. In a swing, he dipped Swoop into the Katen and pulled the Katen apart like a ball of yarn. Neji faltered and tried to move away, but stopped when he saw that Naruto was still too far away to hit him with the Tesson. Naruto swung out and to Neji's amazement, the Hyuga genius felt his chest tear open. A long cruel gash appeared out of nowhere going from the left of his waist to his right shoulder. Asuna team leader Baki choked on his dango. K's no Yaba. Or, rather a derivative of it. Like Tamari's Kamitachi no Jutsu, the orange genin had channeled it through his Tesson. However, the boy hadn't flung the attack, nor was it a flurry of kunai made of wind as Tamari would have described it. No, it was like his technique, a single sharp cut that bypasses virtually any defense. The boy must have concentrated his wind chakra into the fan and used it as an invisible extension, increasing the range and lethality of what would have been a simple melee attack. This boy channeling chakra into attacks without hand signs ninjutsu and ninkinjutsu, such a fighting style would complement an Iryo nin well, Baki thought. I can't imagine how it must have hurt to have lost your father at that age, but to think that destiny is all decided because of that is a huge mistake. Naruto charged close and locked one of Neji's arms in a hold while he swung a leg out to knock the Hyuga off balance. As Neji slipped, Naruto lifted and brought his opponent down to the ground with a slam. Not giving Neji a chance to recover, he put the Hyuga prodigy into a submission hold. Neji struggled and winced, preparing to feel the dirt and stone rub into his wound. But it didn't come. While still struggling, he was able to see his cut close up and form a long scar. Finally the hold relents and he rolls out of it, but not far as his hit I-8 appears in front of him. Put it on. Neji stares at his opponent. Shasenjutsu. He healed my cut, but why? Why have you healed me? Why do you use a civilian martial art? What were you talking about earlier when you said sometimes the only person that might care is an enemy? Why? Naruto stood up and watched as Neji picked up the hit I-8 and stand. Juyoku go Osaisu. Gentleness controls hardness. I follow the principles of Judo. I couldn't get you to listen to me by shouting at you, so I used Shasenjutsu to make you take pause. Eino Jigoro originally created a bujutsu, but he eventually realized that the principles he created with it, Juyoku go Osaisu and Tsuryoku Zenyo, maximum efficiency, minimum effort, could be combined with Jidokaioi, mutual welfare and benefit, to form a Budo. The concept of Judo is this: in short, resisting a more powerful opponent will result in your defeat, whilst adjusting to and evading your opponent's attack will cause him to lose his balance, his power will be reduced, and you will defeat him. This can apply whatever the relative values of power, thus making it possible for weaker opponents to beat significantly stronger ones. This is the theory of Juyoku go Osaisu, a civilian version of your clan fighting style that you have been floored by. The reason I learned it was to understand your clan. However, the only one who seems to have taken the philosophy of your Juken seriously is Hina-chan. I told you about respect for an enemy because look around. Neji scanned his surroundings. Can you name any of those civilians? Did you ever play with civilian kids? No. Do you know why? Because they fear us. We are trained, almost from birth, to fight and kill in the defense of our village and for pay. We can do things that no ordinary civilian is capable of. They don't understand us and so they avoid us. They don't respect us. I wear my hit I-8 and my opponent knows I am a shinobi of Konohagakure. If I die they can say I killed Uzumaki Naruto of Konohagakure. Not some shinobi. Neji placed his thumbs on his jacket and after a moment of concentration, 2 holes appeared. He looped the holes with his hit I-8 and fastened it back up with it. You're hopeless. In a flash, he charged into Naruto. Before Naruto could react, Neji had channeled as much chakra he could into his fist and drove it straight into the orange genin's chest. The chakra released and flooded Naruto's body. Blood erupted from his mouth and drenched the Hyuga prodigy's face. Immediately, the Hyuga clan's genius genin launched what appeared to be Haki Rakujian Sho, followed by a chakra-enhanced kick. Naruto flew across the arena and as he did his body exploded with blood. Cuts appeared all over his body. Neji began to laugh maniacally as the blonde genin landed with a wet thud. What did you think of that? I saw that second circuit and realized what you were doing. To make sure that doesn't work this time I gave you my special attack that I reserve only for the most undeserving of ninja, Rakujushi Setsudan Haki, a trigram 64 amputations. Not only did I hit your Tenketsu, I severed them. With that he turned to Genma, who looked visibly shaken. Proctor, it's over. The Ashi turned to see his daughter on her knees throwing up. Hanabi. He moved to her side and within seconds was holding her as she dry heaved. What is it Hanabi? Hanabi began to sob uncontrollably. Did you not see it father? When those blows hit I could see the chakra lines, it was like they were bleeding. And now it's like he's invisible unless I turn off the Byakugan. Father, I'm scared. She pushed herself further into her father's embrace while he rubbed her back and stroked her hair in a vain attempt to comfort her. The Ashi looked at the scene and felt bile rise in his throat too. Such a brutal assault. Even more so than his attack on Hinata from the reports. He thought to himself. What is he thinking? Executing a fellow Konoha genin like this? Hiashi felt shame overcome his disgust. Hisashi your son. The jutsu? Mushidama. The monotone voice called out. Instantly, a swarm of Kakachu started to swarm Nara Shikamaru as he tried to run out onto the arena. It didn't cover him entirely, but the bugs had managed to secure the young Nara's hands and feet as Abiram Shino slowly walked over and pulled him back to his seat. When Shino felt Shikamaru had calmed down he recalled the kick back into himself. You cannot interfere. It is against the rules to enter another shinobi or kunoichi's match. Why are you acting like this? I'm listening. Shikamaru rubbed his wrists and turned to the bug-using genin. I've just seen a friend, a comrade in arms on pranking missions and recently a role model for self-improvement, get cut open by a guy who beat his own cousin half to death. I can't just sit here and do nothing. Shikamaru huffed and stood up, finding himself uncomfortable while sitting next to a guy with bugs living inside him. I can sympathize with your feelings of loss. As you said, Uzumaki's opponent beat Hyuga Hinata half to death. At this, Shikamaru noticed Shino's sunglasses slip to reveal eyes quivering in anger. The bug-using genin quickly pushed them back. While I never took part in pranking, Hyuga was my teammate and so I feel the loss you feel in the sense of losing a comrade in arms. But the rules are very clear and no matter how you or I feel we cannot hope to continue in the exam or claim the title of Chunin if we do not obey the rules of the Chunin exam finals. You will have to wait until you have defeated the Suna Kunoichi and myself before you can get your revenge. Shikamaru sighed. If the Abiram was willing to break his pattern of monosyllabic sentences, then he could bide his time. Naruto woke to the sound of a flute playing. It was a strangely relaxing tune that made his aches and pains fade. He eventually noticed he was in a pool of water. He sat upright and looked around. It was that power plant in him that the fox was sealed in. The sound was coming from. The music stopped. You're awake then. Good. I would hate to think you'd get to just die unconscious while I have to watch it all come down. What in the world were you thinking? I was trying to wait. Die. I'm dying. And when did you start playing the flute? I have been playing since before you were born and yes. We're dying. That Hyuga boy you were trying to save punched a shitload of chakra into your heart and caused heart failure. He then sliced you open at your Tenketsu points, so if it isn't blood loss, then it's chakra shutdown on account of irrevocable damage to your chakra network. Even if you were able to release the yin seal, your second network wouldn't get past the damage and you'd fry your brain with all the chakra we've stored. Lastly, he put another shitload of chakra into a finisher, a kick to the gut. Right into the seal. My seal is now totally warped that I couldn't escape even if I possessed you and got you to pull off the seal paper on this cage. Would it help? The fox turned to the genin. Would you be more comfortable if I removed that seal paper? The fox was flabbergasted. Boy, I just told you we're dying and you want to make me comfortable. Well, yeah. You played the flute for me till I woke up and if there's no way for us to survive this, I can at least make you comfortable. All this was said with a sincere smile that the fox hadn't seen in a long time. How long do you think we have? The fox rose up. Kurama. Naruto ran over to the cage and climbed up the bars to look the fox in the eyes. What was that? It's like you said, Naruto. Everyone should have a name, how can we acknowledge each other if we don't know each other's names? I can't very well say thank you fox or thank you Ninetales you know. The demon fox known to many as Kyuubi wasn't sure he could control himself at this point. He began to growl. You seem to be angry a lot you know. Maybe if we could be friends you wouldn't have to be so angry all the time you know. The fox collected himself and tried to sound as tough as possible. How about this brat, I'll send chakra to your new seal and you can do whatever you like with it. If I am impressed then I will give you my name. Naruto grinned. Deal. And so your name is? Yes. Now say it. Kurama. At that, the whole room shook and shivered. Naruto reached out and ripped the seal paper away and the whole room fell away and became a formless white. Well what the where are we? I gave you my name Naruto, we are now joined. The white room changed again and suddenly they were in Konoha. At the Hokage mountain. The fox explained. We're currently in your mind space while I move us to the yin seal. I'm afraid that seal on your belly will be visible at all time now, it's utterly warped and I doubt even a master Uzumaki could fix it Naruto what is that? Kurama signaled to the addition to the Hokage mountain in Naruto's mind space. Beside the other Hokages were two heads, close together and looking regal. The face on the left was obviously Naruto, the hair was slightly longer, but the face was smiling the same grin it always had when Naruto was truly happy. The other face was well, when I become Hokage, it's not like I'm going to lie about who I am, and since we're a team I thought the Jinchuriki Hokage of Konoha should have his partner up there with him, you know Kurama. The nine-tailed demon fox, Kyuubi. With a sweep of one of his tails, he could cause tsunamis to crash and storms to rage. He was the embodiment of natural disasters. Kurama had only cried twice in the thousands of years he had lived, the day his father died and now. So are we dead? Naruto dug into a tub of ramen that had appeared in front of him and turned to Kurama, who had dug into a ramen box the size of Ichiraku ramen. They looked out as the sun set on the Konoha in Naruto's mind. No, right now we're in an infinite second. Well we have been fixing our inner workings virtually no time has passed outside. You're still on the floor bleeding and suffering heart failure. Kurama set down his chopsticks and rolled onto his back, scrabbling to get an itch that had been bothering him. But, we've sorted out your seal, cannibalized the remains to strengthen the yin seal and bonded, what do you think the odds are I'd still be able to fight? Kurama rolled back onto his belly. Slim if you wake up and then try to release the yin seal. Your wrists are in no condition to move. You'll have to use our bonded chakra to get it going and activate the yin seal after to take care of the rest. You just have to call my name. Alright, let's finish this. And Kurama. Yes Naruto. Can you teach me to play the flute? Shiranui Genma moved over to the bleeding husk of the boy that he had seen working in the medical center only days ago. He had been a total pro and Shiranui had believed the boy would help put Konoha on the map for its medical capabilities, just like back in the day when Tsunade lived in Konoha. He turned to the audience and saw Izumo and Kotetsu loudly arguing about how Naruto had cheated them out of their winnings. But Kage felt a rage that threatened to overwhelm him. Before, when a teammate had died in his arms, he had felt despair. Today he did not feel despair at the sight of the boy he wanted to help dead on the ground. Today, he wanted to tear the Hyuga estate apart. He wanted to put Hyuga Neji's head on a pike, then tear the council of elders apart, limb by limb. His daughter Tenten felt much the same way. She knew the second Neji had stood up that Naruto had healed Neji. This Iryo Nindo philosophy Naruto had mentioned seemed to mean Naruto wanted to reach Neji before beating him. Neji had replied to this kindness by killing him. She didn't think she could be around her teammate anymore, she decided she would ask for a transfer after the exams. And again, maybe she could just retire from the ninja life Naruto, I'm sorry I asked you to help my damn team. I'm so sorry. Genma knelt down beside the blood-soaked genin. The beige Iryonin coat was no longer beige, and he doubted there was enough cleaner in the village that would get all of the blood out. Sorry kid. He raised his arm up and shouted. Winner of the first round. Northeast he was cut off by a hand grabbing his arm. Kurama. Genma was swamped in chakra and leapt away before he was carried away. Naruto stood up and Genma saw his and slitted like an animal. Like a fox. Yin seal. Kai. The diamond on his forehead disappeared again, and orange-red lines spun and intertwined across his face and down his neck. The jacket, the haori, the kimono, all thrown off and making a soggy pile. The orange-red lines flowed across the bare skin, and Genma saw a black spiral on the boy's stomach before he turned and backed as far away as possible. This match was far from over, and he did not want to get hit by anything this immortal was throwing. Fuinjutsu. Moko. Kai. The ground erupted. Proctor, it's over. Neji Hyuga stood and stared at the sum of his rage. People are born burdened with a destiny they cannot oppose, he thought. Father wanted me to live. He wished I had been born in the main house. But this mark, he said he wanted to understand me, but how could he understand to live with a mark that curses his existence? His destiny is to be defeated, to never ascend higher than the rank of genin. He turned around and see that Naruto wasn't moving. What's this? Neji took a step toward Naruto. Setsuden isn't supposed to do that. It severs the main chakra networks, the arteries and veins. The smaller network should still be intact. He should be getting up and realizing he can't mold chakra. Likely he feels a shot of pain in his hand and sees blood seeping through the bandages. Chakra damage. I punched his chest before for my hand to be bleeding like this. The amount of chakra that would need to have been in my hand. Proctor. Shiranui. Genma turned to the genin with a look of fear. I believe that genin is having a heart attack. He needs immediate medical attention. Genma walked over to the bleeding mess that had been a remarkable new addition to the medical team of the Konoha Medical Center. Was there a quaver in that kid's voice? Looks like for all his talk, Hyuga Neji isn't ready for that side of being a shinobi. Genma knelt down beside the blood-soaked genin. The beige Iryonin coat was no longer beige, and he doubted there was enough cleaner in the village that would get all of the blood out. Sorry kid. He raised his arm up and shouted. Winner of the first round. Neji saw the look on the proctor's face, and he heard the whisper before he raised his arm. Naruto was dead. He tried to rise above what destiny had in store for him, and I killed him for it. Isn't that what I'm doing here? Neji is brought out of his thoughts when the proctor's declaration is cut off abruptly. He turns and sees Naruto standing up. He's alive. He hears Naruto scream out a name. Kurama. What's that? He looks again with the Byakugan. That chakra, it's yellow now. Did he have a third network all this time? No, he's just released his yin seal, and it's the same. I really did sever his other chakra networks. What did he just say? Fuinjutsu. Moko. Kai. On Mount Mayaboku, the legendary toad Sannin known as Jiraiya was running. Running from the aggressive and unrelenting pursuit of a large toad that bore him a great deal of ill will. Gamabunta swung down his sword in a vicious downward arc. Jiraiya rolled to the side and felt blade graze against his hand. Jiraiya had a fairly good idea as to why Gamabunta was angry, and the reason was just 2 words. Haruno Sakura. 2 weeks after the preliminary exams had finished, Jiraiya had decided to take his new apprentice on a trip to the home of the Toad Sages. Her chakra level was incredibly low, so he decided that teaching her to channel and control nature chakra would give her more power. They went to the area that the training oil was made. The oil made it easier to absorb nature chakra, but evaporate if one ever tried to take it away from the mountain. He had asked her to strip down so he could oil her up. Instead, she jumped into the pool and hadn't been seen since. It had not gone down well with the great Toad Sage. Fuinjutsu. Moko. Kai. The ground of the arena shook like an earthquake. Chakra came alight and drew a large spiral into the ground. And then it exploded. The Uzumaki clan's deadly seal, Moko Onslaught Hiashi, watched as a mass of weapons burst from the ground. Kunai, ninja stars, tashibishi, all sorts of bladed tools came from the ground and circled the yellow-eyed shinobi. The caster remotely controls a virtually infinite amount of unsealed weapons that return to the original seal when broken. In the Shinobi Wars, we Hyuga would protect the Uzumakis while they created the seal. You finally activated the seal, Uzumaki. Are you planning to end this fight now? Naruto raised his arm and the weapon surged towards the Hyuga prodigy. What is this technique? He activated the Katen. The blade shattered and disappeared. What? My Katen is taking up more chakra than usual. Those blades are eating my chakra. With that, the Hyuga prodigy cancelled the technique and ran. He kept low and activated the Byakugan. By using the almost 360-degree vision of the all-seeing wide eyes, he kept his eyes on Naruto's arm movements to predict the movement of the blades. What do I have left? He searched his pouch. 13 throwing stars, 20 kunai and 15 exploding tags. I can work with this. He threw the stars at Naruto, the swirling mass of blades created a barrier and then returned to attacking Neji. The Hyuga prodigy threw kunai onto the ground. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10. Now Kai. The 10 kunai exploded, breaking up the mass and putting space between it and him. He ran for Naruto, kunai in hand. The blades failed to return to the seal and fell to the ground, a confused look graced the blonde genin's face. Surprised. I infused my stars with my own chakra before I threw them at you. They weren't supposed to hit you, they were to disrupt the chakra that was controlling the attack. Naruto only had a few dozen blades left. Neji swung his hand back and threw the kunai with all his might. As it drew close, Neji gave the command. Kai. The kunai exploded and propelled the blonde across the arena. He lay on the floor gasping as Neji moved closer. Suddenly, Naruto burst into a puff of smoke. A Kage Bunshin. He spun to where Naruto had been standing. The blades were all on the ground, in a circle. And within that circle, a hole. The ground shook beneath him. It cracked and sank and finally a fist punched through. And kept going until it landed square on Neji's jaw. Neji shot up into the air. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. 3 clones appeared and leapt up into the air. They delivered hard kicks to send him higher and higher up. Zu. Ma. Kai. The last Naruto appeared above him and delivered a powerful rotating heel drop then cannoned into Neji's stomach. Naruto Renden. Neji landed with a hard thud into the ground. He coughed and tried to push himself up. Why you cough? How could you understand what it is like to be burdened with a symbol you could never be rid of? Naruto walked over to him and pulled him up onto his knees. Up close Neji saw the areas he had cut were healed over, the blood still dripping from nails that had dug their way through rock and earth. He saw the yellow eyes with slitted pupils, like an animal's. He saw a strange black spiral on Naruto's stomach. Runic triangles circled it, making it look like a black sun. Some of the triangles seemed to stretch out and upwards, like the pattern had been pulled and stretched out of shape. Is the day? Yes Neji, I do know what it's like. And unlike you I had no family around to offer me anything. Unlike you, who only imagined resentment from the main house, I had real resentment from everyone. Only Iruka-sensei strove to understand me and acknowledge my existence. Hinata fought on while bleeding inside trying to change herself. It changed the lot in her life, the life of a daughter of the main house who was ignored and treated like a nuisance. She has suffered just as much as you Neji. And I have suffered too. But it's no reason to hate everyone. Look at what you have done so far, you're fighting the odds, destiny, just as much as Hinata and I. Neji flinched in surprise. Why do you fight so hard against destiny? Neji was at a loss. Could it possible that Hinata is like me and Naruto? Because I was called a loser. That's why I fight, why I'll never give in, why I'll win, why I'll become the Hokage and chief medic of Konoha. And it's why I'll change the Hyuga. Biba watched color return to Hinata's face and he sighed in relief. Don't scare me like that again Hina-chan. He turned to the Anbu. You can do it all huh? Suddenly the Anbu's hand thrust out and hit the Inuzuka's chest. I'm afraid you'll have to miss the rest of the tournament puppy. Can't have you mentioning me can I? Neji pushed himself off of Naruto and threw a kunai. You're lying. You can't change fate. You can't. Naruto stood and dodged the kunai and as more came he didn't move except to dodge out of the way. Neji ran out of tools to throw and Naruto stepped forward. His eyes shifted back to their sky blue and the diamond returned. He formed a hand seal, his eyes locked on Neji. Uzumaki Fuinjutsu. Sakubaku no Jakyo. The mark on Naruto's stomach seemed to struggle to move but stuttered, the black sun's tail spread out further across Naruto's stomach and up to his chest. His spiky hair grew longer and longer until gravity pulled the hair down. His hair became orange, then red, like the color had been poured into his hair. He continued to walk to Neji, who was rooted to the spot. He started to flinch with every step and chuckled at Neji's look of confusion. I can't hold this form for very long, but I'll show you I can change fate. He reached out and laid his hand on Neji's forehead. To Neji's surprise Naruto then thrust his hand forward. He grabbed hold and pulled. Just don't try showing off for a few days alright. But that he pulled his hand away and a great pain tore its way through Neji's mind. Naruto fell back gasping for air. Kai. Neji stared at what Naruto and gasped. He fell to his knees with a look of utter wonderment. That's. The Ashi stared at the gasping Uzumaki, whose hair was changing back to its usual blonde color. Did he really? Hanabi stared at her cousin and tried to describe the look on his face. Relief. Fear. Confusion. Neji fell to his knees. Proctor, I forfeit. Naruto has won. The proctor cleared his throat and made the announcement and the arena was swarmed with Iryonin rushing to provide the two genin with medical attention. After some preliminary work and minor healing, they were escorted off of the arena. Shikamaru felt his whole body relax. He's alive. He's alive. He didn't understand how but that didn't matter. The ever unpredictable dead last shinobi had defeated the genius. He looked at the schedule of fights. Gaara was due to fight the absent Sasuke, then Shino, and the Suna guy with the face paint. His fight with the Kunoichi was last. He got up and went to follow the Iryonin. Temari and Kankuro were worried. When the blonde genin called out Kurama, Gaara had started convulsing, cradling his head and muttering. He had stopped shaking, and his hands were now tightly grasping his knees, like he wasn't sure what to do with his hands or himself. Temari looked up to where Baki-sensei was watching them. He looked as concerned as they were. Neji wakes up to find himself in a recovery room. He sees a tree outside a nearby window with a bird singing on it. Ugh, my head is killing me. Wait. My head. He rushes off the bed to find the nearest mirror, but swoons and lands on the floor. I did say don't do anything fancy, birdie. Neji looked up to see a grinning whiskered boy looking at him. Hey, did you see what my hair looked like back then? Neji didn't know what else to do except nod. Yeah. It got long and red. Birdie. Naruto seemed to grin even more. Really? Red sounds so awesome. It'd be nice if it could stay like that. He pulled his now long hair into a ponytail. Right now my hair looks like a blonde version of damned pervy sage. He didn't really seem that bothered by it, so Neji decided to continue his search for a mirror. Suddenly a large handheld one appeared, like one of the mirrors barbers have. Here. Said the blonde genin as he held it for Neji. Neji raised it to his face. Same chin, same mouth, same nose, eyes, and then there was the absence of a mark. It wasn't there, nor any hint that it had ever been there, just a cut from when the metal of the hit I ate had cut into him. The bird in the window stopped singing and flew away. I'm free. He really did it. Uzumaki-sama, about the Setsuden I never meant for it to. The door to the room opened. In the doorway stood the head of the Hyuga family, Hyuga Hiashi. Uzumaki-sama, Neji-kun, I congratulate you both on a hard-fought match. The people of Konoha are still applauding your performance. Uzumaki-sama, he turned to Naruto with a bow, when the exams are over and you have recovered, we shall discuss your position in the Hyuga family and your future role in our affairs. He turned towards his nephew and went down on his knees and bowed his head. Neji-kun, I sincerely apologize. I have failed you and I have dishonored the memory of your father, my brother. Neji sat back on his bed and tried to regain his composure. You see, on that day that your father died I fully intended to die. Whatever composure the young Hyuga prodigy had regained from his uncle's apology went out the window as he begun to sputter. What? What are you talking about? My father was killed to take your place. The results may appear that way, but it is not the truth. Hiashi was stood again, and he looked upon his nephew with a sincere look that Neji found hard to argue with. The level of hurt he could see in his uncle's eyes also added weight to the statement. One of the elders of the main house brought your father into the meeting. He told Hisashi had already agreed to the plan, but I couldn't send my own brother to in the end your father. Neji looked at his uncle and motioned for him to continue. He floored me. Hiashi noted the look of surprise on Neji's face. He said he wasn't doing it for the main house, who he resented. He was doing it for his brother. He told me you had seen the ugly side of his face and that mission to Kumo in my place was the first time he really got the chance to choose. Hiashi paused for a moment. He asked me to tell you that he was not being killed to protect the main house. He said that to protect his son, his brother and his whole village, he was choosing death with his own will. He said he wanted to disobey a Hyuga elder just once and that he wanted to choose his own destiny just once. I wanted to wait until you were a little older, but please believe me Neji-kun and accept my apology. He looked up from a boat to see tears welling up in his nephew's eyes. Later, Naruto had left to get a change of clothes when there was a knock at the door. Neji was looking out the window. It's not locked. He didn't turn to face the door till he remembered that Naruto had forbidden him from using the Byakugan for at least the next 24 hours or he'd be at risk of a brain hemorrhage, among other things. He turned to meet his visitor. Ah, Nara Shikamaru. I'm not sure as the reason for the visit, but hell he was cut off by a lack of air and what felt like a hand on his throat. Page Kubishibari no Jutsu. The brown-haired genin stated simply. I could hold you like this till you couldn't breathe and longer, so let me make this clear. If you hurt Uzumaki Naruto again I will kill you. Simple as that. Understand? Neji nodded and Shikamaru let him go. Just so that we understand each other. Shikamaru left the room and Neji took a deep breath of free air. Naruto has some powerful friends it seems. Mused Naruto as he read his chart. Clothes were delivered to the recovery room for Neji. Naruto quickly realized there wasn't a change of clothes coming for him, so he used his Warrick no Jutsu technique to take on a clothed feminine form. Neji watched Naruto leave, musing that she would make a fine bride. Naruto smirked at Neji's first attempt at humor as he left. At his apartment, Naruto activated his Kage Bunshin no Jutsu to complete the two tasks he saw before him, tidy the place and decide on an outfit. His kimono and hakama had been taken somewhere for cleaning and repair, and it had been the only set he had of that design. As the 5 cleaning Narutos moved to the kitchen, the other 5 clones were trying different outfits, while the original made a delivery order to the Chiraku ramen. One of the clones walked out wearing a mesh shirt and shorts with a belt of pouches and one of his medical coats. He was put in the mind of the crazy proctor from the forest stage, Mita Mitarashi Enko. Naruto immediately said no, another time maybe but not today. Another came out wearing his original outfit, but when the clone tried to display some of their new moves, it proved tearing. He wondered what was taking Sasuke so long to arrive. Not now. I can't die yet. His thoughts yelled at him. Uchiha Sasuke was buried in sand and rubble. He began to exhale as he shuffled. Before it had come crashing down, the young Uchiha had taken a deep breath and expanded his body as much as he could. Doing so meant that in this terrible moment of entrapment, he had created extra space for wriggling out. It was still a tight squeeze. As he struggled to dig his way out, he remembered a time with Naruto, not long after the mission to Nami no Kuni. The heir to the Uchiha clan stood with a bemused look as he watched his teammate tear into the earth with his bare hands. "What are you doing, dope? That's hardly ninja training." He sighed and watched a crow flying overhead, its large black wings causing a great shadow across the training ground. When he turned back he coughed in surprise. The dobe had managed to dig 6 feet into the ground. "Stupid team, you gotta be prepared for anything, you know." The voice seemed muffled until a hand burst through the ground roughly 12 feet from where Naruto had begun digging. Soon, the blonde's head squeezed its way out and he wore a daft, satisfied grin on his face. "In that mission we were trapped in mist and all kinds of stuff happened, you know. Couple of years ago I was walking past a building site and some of the earth shifted. I ended up falling in and I was trapped. I was woken by a mole biting at my ear and I forced my body to tuck in and then claw at it." Sasuke looked at the blonde's hands, the fingers were bleeding at the nails, but at the same time the nails were slightly pointed. "From then on I practiced digging as a way of escape and sneaking, you know. How do you think I've been able to hide from Anbu and Jonin? Naruto himself up to sit on the edge of the new hole and grinned. Uchiha concentrated on holding his breath and remembered Naruto's advice. "Don't hold your breath too long or you'll be gasp and run out of air. Talk slow breaths and keep your heart rate down. Concentrate on your goal and push through." He thought about killing his brother, of avenging his clan. But as that happened he began thinking about how Naruto had acted in Nami. How he had wanted to understand Zabuza and that kid with the ice mirrors. Was that what he wanted? "Why did you decide to kill your clan Itachi? Is that what I want? To understand." He kept pushing through the earth and considered his next steps to restoring his clan's honor. He thought of the Mangekyo and its power. Suddenly, he saw the grinning face of Naruto. To achieve the Mangekyo Sharingan, one had to kill their best friend. His limited experience in interpersonal relationships told him that was Naruto. Naruto had grown up without a family much like him, and they spent a great deal of their time together, training and competing with one another. He felt close to Naruto. The boy could smile and joke despite his crappy childhood in a way that Sasuke hadn't. And he would kill him to obtain the power to defeat Itachi. Just like his brother, that's a disturbing thought. He wants me meet him with eyes like him, but how can I want to be like a person like him? Sasuke felt rage boil within him and the mark on his shoulder burned, trying to break through the seal Kakashi had put on him. He dug harder, almost swiping the earth like it was an enemy. Finally, light burned his eyes and he took a big lungful of air. "Naruto. Thank you for the lesson, Uzumaki-sensei." As he stood in the mirror, Naruto tried to decide if it was the right look for him. Orange 3/4 length trousers tucked into dark orange shin guards and his tool pouch worn to the front instead of the back, a long sleeve mesh shirt with a shoulder holster holding his Tesson, and his hit I-8 was fastened across his chest by it. He was wearing black sandals and another of his customized Iryonin coats. This coat was a bit more special than the previous coat. He had a number of seals built into the inside of the coat that could release stored wind chakra to control a fall or give him a speed boost. Or it could release stored lightning chakra as a trap or to add more oomph to an attack. Perfect. As he walked down the corridor to the recovery room, Naruto saw Shikamaru entering the recovery room he and Neji had shared. Thinking that the Nara boy had come to see how he was, he ran the rest of the way and went to open the door when he heard choking. "I could hold you like this till you couldn't breathe and longer, so let me make this clear. If you hurt Uzumaki Naruto again I will kill you. Simple as that. Understand?" Naruto couldn't tell what Neji's response was, but he heard someone gasp for air, so he assumed Shikamaru had stopped. "Just so that we understand each other." The door started to open, so the blonde genin grabbed his report from the basket next to the door and buried his face in it while putting distance between himself and the door. Shikamaru left the room headed back to the arena area. "Naruto has some powerful friends it seems," mused Naruto as he read his chart. "Did I just refer to myself in the third person?" Naruto is concerned. The Kazekage turned to the Sandaime Hokage and gestured at the still raucous crowd. "They're quite restless, aren't they?" he said with a slight laugh in his voice. Hiruzen nodded. "It was quite the match, wasn't it? The Kazakage shook his head. No Sandame, I think you'll find it is more to do with the next match. For the other Kages and respected jonins in the audience, I doubt there is a match they'd enjoy more. The board was showing that the next fight to come was Subaku no Gaara and Uchiha Sasuke. The Kazakage looked around. By the way, where is he? A jonin with a large scar across his face appeared and whispered into the Hokage's ears. Nothing could be heard by anyone else. Across the arena, people were yelling out for the battles to begin. Shikamaru and Naruto had returned and were watching from a balcony. The young Nara turned to the blonde, do you know what the deal is, Naruto? Is Uchiha not going to show? Before Naruto could answer, the two genin heard scuttling and turned to find Aburame Shino standing behind them. The bug user pushed his sunglasses back up his nose. Confucius once said. The wise do not approach the dangerous. Could Uchiha have made a wise decision perhaps? Naruto saw Gaara not far from them. He noticed that the redhead's eyes became darker when they mentioned Sasuke. Could that guy have interfered with Sasuke's ability to enter? He smiled and puffed his chest up as he faced the two Konoha genin. What are you talking about? Sasuke is definitely going to be here. Handling his self-made technique, the Chidori. Kakashi punched his way out of the earth. He turned to see his student, the last Uchiha, claw his way out of the landslide that the Suna genin had left them in. He was happy with the boy's development. His speed and reflexes were close to Guy's pupil, though this was achieved with chakra rather than strict physical training. And by teaching him the Chidori, Kakashi believed he had provided a preferable alternate to the curse mark. As he listened out for watchers or enemies, the copy nin heard the boy rasp something that made his blood run cold. Thank you for the lesson, Uzumaki-sensei. Sasuke-kun doesn't use honorifics. In the time we have worked together, that brat hasn't even referred to my position. What could Uzumaki-kun have taught Sasuke-kun? Tenkuro gripped a railing and felt worry building within him. The match with the Uchiha was part of the invasion plan, and without him, he turned to the red-haired ninja that he feared above all others. Could he have done this? He knows how important this is, could he have really just completely ignored the mission, just so he could kill? He looked over at their team leader, and he could tell that Baki-sensei was thinking the same thing. Baki took a look across to the other side of the stadium and saw that the Kazakage had fully turned to face the Sandame. Focusing all of his attention like that, he must be looking for some answers or some way to play for time. Damn that snake Orochimaru. His desire for that Uchiha boy for his experiments may well be the downfall of this invasion. Smoke appeared on the arena floor and two figures walked out of the haze. Finally, wait. Who are they? In the deep blackness of oblivion, a girl all in pink swam unconsciously through the nothingness. Time was as nothing as the pink female appeared to either not care or not understand where she was. Suddenly, a jolt pulled from her blank state and color appeared in her vision again. She saw bubbling yellow in front of her and it burned. She closed her eyes again tightly and tried to return to the nothingness, but a voice screamed at her. Shanro. What the hell were you thinking, you fool? Stop ignoring this and do something. Sakura recognized a voice as much like her own and a figure almost exactly like her but lacking in color, a black and white imitation. Uchineru Sakura. Though her parents were civilians and their parents, the young Kunoichi of Konoha could only deduce that she had some ancestor who was a ninja with a Kage Genkai of some sort. Uchineru Sakura voiced her innermost thoughts and egged her on in certain endeavors. Her biggest piece of evidence though was from her fight with Ino Pig. Uchineru Sakura had pushed her out of her mind when she had tried to take possession of Sakura's body. Now, while she had shut herself away from the pain of drowning in the Toad Sage's oil, Uchineru Sakura had taken over the body in her absence. No. Before she had shut her eyes again she had seen her arm and it was black and white like Yaha. I changed form and now you need to take over. We're at the bottom so if you walk us to a wall in your form, we can swap places and allow each of our bodies to recover. The oil is forcing nature chakra into us so we can use that too. She was cut off by a hand around her throat. Aka. I have a better idea. Your way we leave none the worse off, except my unwanted tenant can take over when she pleases. Instead, I think I'll wear your skin for my escape and store the new chakra inside me instead of you. I'll replace your sorry ass for chakra reserves greater than that senile pervert up there. Reopening her eyes, she checked that Uchineru Sakura's skin was still covering her own. She started to half-wade half-walk through the oil until she reached the side. Then, using Kakashi's training, she started to walk up the side. The monochromatic skin started to crack and peel, Sakura felt the burn but kept going. In her mind she heard Uchineru Sakura whimper in pain, her throat having become too raw to continue screaming. Don't be like that, look at the positives, I will still be alive and with your sacrifice, I'll be stronger than ever and Sasuke-kun will have to notice me. Jiraiya collapsed in front of the oil fountain, his body exhausted from weeks of running. As Gamabunta leapt into the clearing and moved in for the kill, he mused that it was a funny little circle of fate in that he should meet his end in the mountains, where he had learned he would apprentice the savior. The fountain exploded just as the giant toad sword came down. Jiraiya looked up to see a stone toad, the size of a man and wearing a red kipao dress, blocking the sword. The stone toad leapt forward and landed a kick on Gamabunta's face. The large toad was sent an incredible distance into the air. The stone toad landed and started forming a series of hand seals he didn't recognize. Doten. Automagikushi no Dangan. As the stone toad pushed their hands out, holes opened in the palms, and a mass of tadpoles made of stone burst forth and drove straight into Gamabunta, sending him further and further away. The stone tad turned and walked over to the toad Sannin and knelt down next to him. "How was that, sensei?" "SS Sakura-chan." In the center of the arena stood the toad Sannin with his apprentice. Sakura was wearing a pink sleeveless kimono-style blouse with a red obi sash and red 3/4-length trousers. Along with this she was wearing Jetta sandals like her sensei's. They walked over to the steps and found some seats, ignoring the stares and questioning until finally the crowds returned to demanding that the next fight get underway. Sakura began to look agitated. "Where's Sasuke-kun?" A scarred ninja appeared next to Genma the proctor, and after a small conversation, the proctor stepped forward and raised his voice to the audience. "Ladies and gentlemen. Due to an unforeseen delay in the arrival of one of the combatants, we are going to move on to the next battle." All around the stadium, Genma noticed mixed reactions. Some looked pleased that something was coming while others looked put out. Likely some are just here to see how the last Uchiha performs. Bunch of pompous money grabbers. He cleared his throat and returned to the announcement. Aburam Shino vs Subaku no Kankuro. "Will the combatants please come on down?" "Shoot." Kankuro looked out at the arena floor and then at the puppet strapped to his back. "My match doesn't really matter. That shady guy looks easy enough, but after what he did the other guy he faced, I don't want to risk damaging Karasu so soon before the invasion. Damn, I don't like backing out of an easy fight like this." He raised his hand into the air and shouted down to the proctor. "I forfeit." On the other side of the stadium, Naruto and Shikamaru watched as Shino's clothes rustled with activity and the noise of clicking and screeching could be heard. Both were put in mind of a beehive after poking it with a stick. They couldn't read Shino very well, but if they could hazard a guess, they were both in agreement that Aburam Shino looked like he was ready to blow a gasket. "We need to play for time. If the plan is to wait till this Uchiha kid shows up, then I better make this look good." Tamari unhooked her war fan, and with a great swing she surrounded herself with a great gust of wind. As it settled she disappeared, only to jump out of the tornado that had started right next to the proctor. She walked out and waited for her opponent to come down. "Good luck, Shikamaru. You better make it to the next round." He gave a big grin as his Nara made his way down to the arena without any prompting. "My Nara? When did Shika become my Nara?" Naruto scrunched his face in thought as he considered the day they had ramen and the way Shika had blushed after Naruto had thrown Gaara out the window. Then he remembered what he had heard earlier. Shikamaru had threatened to kill Neji if he ever hurt Naruto. I've never heard Shika sound so serious before. It was like he considered Naruto to be a special person like Haku had described his reason for serving Zabuza. Does Shika think of me as his special person? He seems so different right now, like he wants to prove himself. He didn't even complain about facing off with a girl either. "Hey. Hurry up and get on with this crappy fight." There were other shouts that followed, basically the same theme being hurled out as Shikamaru made his way down the steps and onto the arena floor. He sighed. Everyone is so eager to see Uchiha fight. They're probably annoyed that after that long-ass intermission they're being forced to watch a pathetic excuse of a match between two side acts, wouldn't you say, Proctor? Genma could only nod, agreeing with the pineapple-headed Genin summation of current events. The blonde Kunoichi on the other hand wasn't quite so agreeable. "You bastard. Don't stick me with the same label as you." She rushed forward and leapt into the air, swinging her war fan in a huge viscous arc. A huge gust surged toward Shikamaru, who ducked out of the way to avoid being hit. Two more gusts came from opposite directions, and as Shikamaru tried to decipher a way out of it, Zenkuha. Another blast from another direction struck the gust and dispelled them. The proctor and the two genin turned toward the approaching figure. The figure was holding a strange pipe in his left hand, and as he approached he lifted his voice. "Sorry I'm late, but I was meeting a teammate whilst he was convalescing and lost track of time." Up in the stands, Gaara showed a rare display of emotion. Shock. Team leader Baki was also shocked as he looked at the approaching figure. "Gaara, I thought you." Hinata Dosu, reporting for duty. On the night of a full moon in Konohagakure, during the month allotted for training before the final round of the Chunin exams, the youngest child of the Kazuki-age of Sunagakure sat on the roof of a tall and elegant building. He stared up at the bright orb in the night sky and felt Shukaku's bloodlust rise up within him. He had chosen the roof because it separated him from the rest. He knew he would have killed the one who claimed the title of team leader and the two who called themselves his siblings if he had been near them on that night, a night when Shukaku's bloodlust could overpower his self-control. He started to wonder what sleep felt like when he sensed the approach of another. The figure's face was almost completely covered in bandages, and he wore a Hittite that indicated him as one of Orochimaru's ninja. He couldn't remember his name, only that he had been the one who beat the roly-poly blob genin. A mistake on your part, snackling. Shikaku is hungry and you're here. You sure got me. Kanuta Dosu, leader of Atagaku's premier genin squad, Team Dosu, called out to the Suna genin. I guess you really don't sleep. That's a shame for you then, I was going to get you quite like while you slept. Now, we'll have to fight. Right here, right now. And my chances of facing the Uchiha boy will get ever higher. He pulled his sleeve back to reveal the melody arm. I know about your sand armor, Suna-kun, how about we see how it holds up against my Kaiamaisen? Dosu was sure of himself. He had made it to the final round, he was the team leader, and he was the smart. The sound from his melody arm could make it through whatever thickness the sand could offer and rattle the bones of the boy inside. He had tools, kunai, throwing stars and exploding tags. If push came to shove, then he always had. Is he laughing? That Suna freak is actually laughing. Gaara stood and looked down at the Odo Nin. Foolish. He gets thirsty during the full moon. Gaara's eyes closed and everything seemed to disappear into blackness. For a moment he felt calm, relaxed. Is this what sleep feels like? He wondered. It didn't last. Soon his body was surrounded in pain, he felt like he was being eaten by millions and billions of little ants. Shukaku was devouring him again, just like every other time he had tried to sleep or let Shukaku take over. He pulled himself out of his rest and forced his eyes to open, to wake up. He woke to see 3 hideous rips across the roof. Like a gigantic animal had scratched into it. In the midst of this was a blood-stained corpse. Shukaku has fed then. With that, he turned away and left, having no further interest in the sight. On a separate rooftop, Kanuta Dosu watched the red-haired ninja leave. He turned his attention back to stitching the cut across his chest. He knew it was more luck than skill that had saved him. The straw raincoat he wore was a rare artifact from Kusagakure that he had taken for himself during a mission. The Wara shroud allowed him to manipulate straw for a number of uses. In this case he had created a straw dummy and had it filled with a number of blood packs that he kept for just such an occasion. The dummy didn't move, talk or attack like a cage bunshin could, but it didn't disappear after either. With this, the higher-ups would think he was dead. This gave him the perfect chance undercover reconnaissance. Orochimaru set us up. My team were gonna be lambs to the slaughter for his experiments with the Uchiha. Way it is now, I have 3 options. 1. Finish the mission I was given and kill Uchiha. 2. Let everyone think I'm dead and run. 3. Kill Orochimaru-sensei. If I kill Uchiha, Orochimaru will either kill me or reward me. My money's on kill. If I run, Kin and Zaku will be killed since they probably still think Orochimaru was only testing us. Killing Orochimaru-sensei probably has the best payout, but if I can't beat that Suna brat, then what chance do I have against my own sensei? His thoughts are disturbed when he realizes he's not alone on the roof. He sees an old man covered in bandages. That was an impressive move there, Odo Nin, Kanuta Dosu, said Shimura Danzo. Perhaps we can go downstairs for some tea and we can talk about village allegiances. Dosu watched the first fight of the final round from a concealed spot, deciding to keep his distance from the red-headed Suna Nin. He was dismayed by the Uchiha brat's non-attendance, but that was another matter. For now, he decided to map out the battle capabilities of his future opponents. Uzumaki was clearly a master of his stealth, indicated by how cleanly, quickly and quietly he had tunneled through the ground. Dosu knew servants of Orochimaru who could turn into giant moles that were messier. He was also an intuitive fighter with ridiculously efficient regenerative powers and a gruesome long-range attack. That guy will have to fight Uchiha or Gaara before getting to me, I should be safe then. As for my side of the exams, that Aburam guy is someone I'd want to keep my distance from after what he did to Zaku. The Nara seemed unmotivated in his fight with Kin, but he's obviously capable and powerful. He's probably more of a tactician than a fighter, like me. By the time we get to our fight, most of the arena will be shadow and I'll have nowhere to run. Then there's Gaara's brother and sister. She seems reliant on her fan, a long-range fighter with a wind nature. Zankuha should dispel any wind attacks, then I should get close and separate her from the fan. The guy is a puppet user and doubtless he's able to use it for a lot more things than simple substitution. Probably holding back. Still, the puppet's made of hollow wood and sound can still break it or try to get past it and hit the puppet master. He watched as a scarred ninja that Danzo-sensei had identified as Namiashi Raido appeared next to the proctor and after a small conversation, the proctor stepped forward and raised his voice to the audience. Ladies and gentlemen. Due to an unforeseen delay in the arrival of one of the combatants, we are going to move on to the next battle. Dosu squinted his eye in annoyance. He had hoped to see his once target in combat again, but it seemed he had either run off or been taken care of prior to the match. But for it to be delayed rather than disqualify Uchiha, likely there were some higher-ups with deep pockets that wanted Uchiha to fight whenever he got here to see how the last Uchiha performs. The proctor wasn't finished. Aburame Shino vs Subaku no Kankuro. Will the combatants please come on down? Shoot. Kankuro looked out at the arena floor and then at the puppet strapped to his back. My match doesn't really matter. That shady guy looks easy enough, but after what he did the other guy he faced, I don't want to risk damaging Karasu so soon before the invasion. Damn, I don't like backing out of an easy fight like this. He raised his hand into the air and shouted down to the proctor. I forfeit. On another side of the stadium, Hinata Dosu watched as the Aburame Genin's clothes rustled with activity and the noise of clicking and screeching could be heard. Like a beehive that had just been poked with a stick. Dosu remembered once when Kin had used her senbon to knock a beehive on one the Sound 5's heads. It was the 8-limbed Kidomaru, if he remembered correctly. It was hilarious until the spidery ninja started eating the bees. He couldn't read the Aburame from such a distance, but at a guess, he was almost certain that Aburame Shino looked like he was ready to blow a gasket. We need to play for time. If the plan is to wait till this Uchiha kid shows up, then I better make this look good. Temari unhooked her war fan, and with a great swing she surrounded herself with a great gust of wind. As it settled she disappeared, only to jump out of the tornado that had started right next to the proctor. She walked out and waited for her opponent to come down. The powerful gust that masks high-speed movement, making it look like teleportation. Rather flashy really, not very in keeping with the image she was presenting. She's playing for time. Surmised Dosu. They must be waiting for Uchiha to show up before they attack. And yet for the puppet user to forfeit, to conceal his full capabilities, they're waiting for Uchiha to show up. He shifted his weight and considered his next step, entering the public view. Obviously I could just drop down now and begin with Nara, but then I'll have to face the Sunanin. If I wait for them to start then I have a chance of seeing her in action, but I could risk disqualification. Hey. Hurry up and get on with this crappy fight. There were other shouts that followed, basically the same theme being hurled out as Shikamaru made his way down the steps and onto the arena floor. He sighed. Everyone is so eager to see Uchiha fight. They're probably annoyed that after that long-ass intermission they're being forced to watch a pathetic excuse of a match between two side acts, wouldn't you say, Proctor? Genma could only nod, agreeing with the pineapple-headed Genin summation of current events. From his hidden spot, Dosu also nodded in agreement. As he did so, he saw the blonde Kunoichi rush forward and a third option for this fight came to him. You bastard. Don't stick me with the same label as you. She leapt into the air, swinging her war fan in a huge viscous arc. A huge gust surged toward Shikamaru, who ducked out of the way to avoid being hit. Two more gusts came, from opposite directions, and as Shikamaru tried to decipher a way out of it, Zenkuha. Another blast from another direction struck the gust and dispelled them. The proctor and the two genin turned toward the approaching figure. The figure was holding a strange pipe in his left hand, and as he approached he lifted his voice. Sorry I'm late, but I was meeting a teammate whilst he was convalescing and lost track of time. Up in the stands, Gaara showed a rare display of emotion. Shock. Team leader Baki was also shocked as he looked at the approaching figure. Gaara, I thought you. Hinata Dosu, reporting for duty. He stood at full height, his hunching would have made his entrance rather anticlimactic. He had also updated his wardrobe. He still had his Atagakur standard issue boots, snake-patterned scarf and trousers with a Wara shroud. However, he was now wearing a short-sleeved black jacket that was open and stopped above his midriff. His scar from Shukaku's attack was very visible, as was his previously hidden weapon, the melody arm. He held a long chakra-enriched pipe in his left hand and slid it into a holster on his boot. There was another change he had made that the others were staring at intently. His hit I-8. Hinata Dosu, leader of Team Dosu, formerly of Kusagakur, formerly of Atagakur, currently a Konohagakure genin, ready to fight sir. He gave a small bow to the proctor. The Suna Kunoichi was having none of it. He's late for his match with the pineapple head, he's forfeited his match by default. Now get him off the field or I lug. Her speech was cut off as Dosu, channeling air out of the pipe, rocketed towards her and punched her in the stomach with his melody arm. He activated his Kaiamisen and punched again. She fell back a short distance, clutching her stomach until she started retching, throwing up in the middle of the arena. Dosu turned to the proctor. It was supposed to be a one-on-one between the Nara and myself, and the young girl over there attacked my opponent before you gave the mark. I could petition for her disqualification. He noticed a horrified look on her face between bouts of retching on the floor. However, I actually think we should continue the fight with all three of us. It ought to make up for certain matches being skipped over. He made it sound as logical as he could, and beneath his raps he smiled as the proctor nodded in agreement. The proctor raised his voice again to the audience. Ladies and gentlemen. This match will be a three-way battle. Nara Shikamaru of Konoha versus Subaku no Temari of Suna versus Hinata Dosu of Konoha. If the combatants are ready. Temari pulled herself off the ground and nodded. Then, begin. In the audience, Baki gripped the railing tightly. One of Orochimaru's men had switched sides. How much did he know of the invasion? It is of no concern Baki. He turned to face Gaara. He was one of Orochimaru's crash test dummies for whatever he did to Uchiha Sasuke. He was never part of the invasion plan. Baki sighed in relief and returned his attention to the fight. Underneath his disguise, Orochimaru felt a knot of rage tighten in his stomach. That one of his experiments didn't have the good grace to die when he was no longer needed was something he hated, and worse still that disobedient whelp had joined up with Konoha as well. You shall pay for your insolence Dosu-kun. With your life. Sat beside him, Sarutobi Hiruzen smiled and had an extra long puff of his pipe. The Kanuta boy had been a tough egg to crack, but after much negotiation, he had agreed to help them. His knowledge of all the faces of Itogakure's elite and his talent for sketching meant that all the Jonin and Anbu had pictures identifying all the lead combatants in the service of Orochimaru. Forces had been scattered to watch over them, ready to attack at any moment. The Suna forces were still unknown, but it still meant that the invasion force's overall efficiency had been more or less cut in half. Excellently done old friend. I hope Orochimaru likes your next surprise, Danzo. The Mari launched another massive wind strike at her opponents, and both jumped away. Heh, these leaf rats are good at running away then. Shikamaru peered out from behind a tree and watched the Kunoichi work while trying to analyze the recent developments. I'm not going to lose this fight, but now it's two at once. Besides, a guy can't just go around and hit a girl so. From the balcony, with a voice that disturbed the wildlife in Nami no Kuni, such was the volume it was at that time Ino yelled, bust her up. Shikamaru. Get her with a 16-hit combo. Yeah. Ino punched the air and Shikamaru sighed, feeling tired out just from the force of her resonating voice. On the other side of the arena, hidden behind a tree, Dosu shook his head in an attempt to stop his ears ringing. If that kind of voice is hereditary, she would be ideal as the first Odonin to wield a related Keke Genkai. He returned to analyzing his match. His attack on the Kunoichi told him her skills were more in the long-ranged field of fighting, but she wasn't without some skill. She had tensed at the right time and would likely have been able to counter his attack had it not been for the sound penetrating her. He also knew that she would keep her distance from him and would probably target him first. Her first mistake. At this time of the day, Nara would be the ideal first target. His shadows won't reach far, so he's the most vulnerable. The Mari spotted Shikamaru in the patch of trees to her left. Let's see, he's a ninja that uses shadows, so he'll obviously try to lure me into the shade. Like I'll fall for that. That other one uses sound waves, and he has that pole that can fire airwaves. Like my war fan but a great deal more suited to stealthy, specially aimed attacks. I can't see him, but I can't let him get too close. I was going to make this flashy to play for time, but it looks like this match will take a while without any grandstanding. Ino felt her jaw drop when she saw Choji pull out yet another bag of crisps. Is your stomach really fully recovered Choji? Choji chose to ignore the question. Isn't Uchiha supposed to be fighting now? He noticed a vein on Ino's temple that was quivering and steadily getting more pronounced. Best change the subject from that skinny mute, mused the next head of the Akimichi clan. For Shikamaru to be in the finals it seems really out of place for him, don't you think? Ino considered what Choji was saying. You were given time off training so you could recover Choji, so you haven't seen it. But lately Shikamaru has been training properly and while he can't breathe fire or make solid clones, he's really good at devising strategies. Like when he coordinated some of our missions instead of Asuma-sensei. And I don't think we'd have made it as far as we did in these exams if it hadn't been for him. He walked down there and he wasn't pushed and he didn't whine or anything. He seems like he's really revved up for this. She again burst from her seat and her words woke the Kumagakure Jinchikiri killer bee from his dreams of rapping with the stars. Go Shikamaru. Shikamaru moved to another tree to get a view of the arena, looking for some clue as to how he might be able to beat two ninja that clearly approach fights the way he does. It was as it had been at the end of the match between Neji and Naruto. He looked up at Naruto, who was cheering him on loudly and with a smile on his face. And then he looked at the arena ground. That's right he went and then that should work. He stepped down from the tree and turned slightly, entering Tamari's field of vision with a large, knowing smile on his face. Tamari scowled. What is doing with that dumb expression on his face? Is he making fun of me? She pulled her war fan back. Kamitachi no jutsu. A powerful gust rolled out of her. Up in the crowd Tenten gasped at the attack that had banished all of her weapons as it tore into the trees that Shikamaru was standing by. Dosu watched from his hiding space. He looked over to where Nara had been looking, hoping to discern his opponent's plan. Wait that is clever. That is very clever. And I know just how to beat it. But let's see him do it to her, then the competition for me. Dosu rushed forward and launched his Zankuha at the blonde Kunoichi, forcing her to leap and launch her Kamitachi at him. Her attack overpowered his and he pulled back, hiding away again. As she landed and the dust cleared, Tamari saw a thin black mass rush toward her. A shadow. She leapt back again and again. As she did so, it starting to shrink. She finally stopped and scored a line across the ground in front of her. "Ha. I have seen through your Kagame no jutsu." She saw a tired look on his face, along with a long cut across his cheek. "There's a limit to how much you can stretch and shape your shadow, isn't there? You can't stretch it any further than the original surface area of the shadow, am I right?" He nodded. Which would mean, judging by the distance from where he attacked from his shadow, from the furthest point the shadow from the stadium wall, stretched taking into account the possibility of him using the stadium's shadow as his own there. She scored another line into the ground, a more solid one this time. The absolute limit of his shadow from him is 15 meters and 32 centimeters. Shikamaru knelt down against the wall and closed his eyes. He then formed his hands into a shape with his fingers and thumbs touching their counterpart with his thumbs the closest to his head. Uhi Kurenai, Jinjutsu mistress of Konoha, turned to Sarutobi Asuma, Shikamaru's Jonin instructor. "What sort of hand seal is that? I've never seen anything like it." Asuma chuckled and had to catch his cigarette as it fell from his lips. "That's no seal." Uhi Kurenai turned to her colleague and fellow team leader Sarutobi Asuma. "Not a hand seal. But he has his hands in a strange formation and he's obviously concentrating." Asuma grinned and lit another cigarette. "It's a habit of his, he's the kind of person who likes to slowly take his time. He's like one of those old geezers. That's why he plays games like shogi and go. I've been playing against him since he became my student and this is what he always does when he's backed into a corner." He turned to see a confused look on Kurenai's face and started to chuckle, causing his thick sideburns to bristle with movement. "It's a sign that he's working on a strategy as such. I have never won a match against him." Understanding began to dawn on her. Not even once. He watched the Jinjutsu mistress's eyes squint with annoyance. "You're speaking of strategies and games, Asuma. This is a real fight, Asuma, not another boardgame." Asuma swiped his hand dismissively. "Those games are said to have roots as devices for tacticians to plot their wars with. You could say that Shikamaru is a shrewd tactician." Kurenai shook her head at Asuma's words. "Shrewd? I've saw his grades from the academy when they were getting sorted into teams. He was supposed to be at the same level as Naruto. And you just saw Naruto beat a Taijutsu genius who graduated at the top of his class." Asuma took a long drag of his cigarette and let the smoke linger in his mouth a while longer before letting it sift out slowly. He said it was too much of a hassle to move the pencil. "It seems he slept through his written exams. I then got the idea he had a talent for strategy despite his grades, so I had him take an IQ test disguised as a game." I wasn't being all that serious, but Kurenai moved closer, motioning for him to continue. "A true diamond in the rough. He's a super genius, Kurenai, with an IQ over 200. Kurenai felt a cold chill go down her spine. "Over 200. Looks like he's done planning. Looks like you're finally going to be serious." The Suna Kunoichi pulled her war fan back. "Kamitachi no jutsu." The flurry of wind shuriken surged toward Shikamaru. The Youth Nara pulled out a kunai and jumped behind a tree. There's no escape. The attack tore into the small group of trees, furiously ripping into the wood and leaves. As the Suna Kunoichi kept firing off the attack, Shikamaru carefully removed his coat while avoiding leaving his arms out of the safety of the tree. "How long are you going to hide in there? Give up already." She felt herself losing her temper. Does he really have some sort of strategy? Kurenai turned to Asuma with a rather mocking look. Asuma looked confused, like he couldn't understand what was going on. He's supposed to. Ino stood up again and started to yell loudly, "What are you doing, Shikamaru? You're never going to get at her if you stay there like that." While she had hoped her tirade would motivate her teammate to do something, it did have a beneficial outcome. Kanuta Dosu, with his sensitive hearing, fell from his hiding spot and Tamari focused her attack on him instead. Dosu fired his Ankuha to dispel the Kamitachi and ran for the nearby rock, only for a kunai to appear in front of it and explode. He turned and realized it could only have come from the forest as a Kamitachi came straight at him. "Damn that Nara creep, he must still be sore about what I did to the fatso. I can't dodge the blonde bitch's attack, I'll have to." The attack hit and he exploded into a massive straw. It glided through the Kamitachi and circled round Tamari. Finally, Dosu emerged and punched at her with a melody arm. She barely managed to block with the war fan, momentarily letting go to avoid the Kayamisen. Nevertheless, the Kunoichi was not unarmed. She quickly grabbed a kunai from her pouch and threw it. Dosu fell backwards and Tamari retrieved her war fan. With all the force she could muster, she brought the war fan down on the former Odonin's head. Dosu went down and she turned her attention back to the Nara when a kunai flew towards her. And his shadow. "Damn, I moved into close." Quickly she ran for the marker and opened up her war fan to block the kunai. From the safety of the line she took a defensive stance and knocked away the kunai. The Nara's shadow reached the line and kept going. "Shit." Tamari jumped back further to avoid the black tendril and stared at the smirking pineapple head. "So that's what you were doing. whiling away the time until the sun dropped lower so the shadows of the wall and yourself would grow larger. She felt like sneering. Judging from the height of the sun, this is the furthest he can reach. I'll stand here and taunt him. He'll push himself to reach me and that'll leave him exposed. She puffed up her chest with pride and faced the crowd with a smug look. And Kuro screamed out to his sister. Tamari. Move. A massive shadow appeared at her feet and joined with the shadow. It grew larger and larger until it surged toward her. She tried to dodge, but it simply followed. He tendril swerved and weaved around her, trying to reach her. She looked up and saw the source of the extra shadow. His coat. Shikamaru had tied his coat and hit IA together to create a makeshift parachute, using a kunai as a counterweight. Damn. She thought. He distracted me with his shadow attack so that I wouldn't notice what was going on above me. Then, when I finally see it, he attacks me from below. If I keep dodging like this, he'll just keep me moving till the shadows get large enough to totally reach me. She took hold of her war fan and used it to send herself to the other side of the arena, out of reach of the shadow. She then directed an attack at the parachute. With it down, his attack reach was crippled. With little to fear, she walked back towards her opponent and past the section of the area where the previous match had been particularly brutal. She smirked at her opponent. Shikamaru's face became stern. For you to evade that attack. In the audience, Kurenai was impressed with the performance of both ninja. She gave Asuma a sympathetic look. Seems his plan wasn't good enough. Asuma nodded. Indeed, he nodded. His opponent is pretty bright herself, she thinks ahead. In another section of the stadium, Tenten watched with clenched teeth as the Kenweichi that had nearly snapped her spine defeat Shikamaru's attack. Damn, she's really strong. Father, what do you think Shikamaru's next move is? She turned to find her father no longer sitting next to her. Father. The white-haired author of the Icha Icha novels was trying desperately to watch the fight while trying to screen out his Pinket students' ramblings about Uchiha Sasuke. In one sense it had brought a feeling of nostalgia, reminding him of when Tsunade Haim had praised Orochimaru. Jiraiya. A voice called him and he turned to face them. The green one-piece jumpsuit, orange leg warmers, a green bomber jacket, a long mullet of brown hair and eyes almost permanently squinting. Is that you, Katana Kaji-kun? Jiraiya smiled. It was his pupil and one of Minato's closest friends, Katana Kage. I almost didn't realize it was you were so quiet just then. He stood to look at his old student face to face, but when he got stood, a hand settled on his shoulder and pushed down. Hard. So hard he went through his chair and ended up sitting on the floor amongst the wreckage of the seat. Well, you were away. Naruto, the Slug Prince of Konoha, became my pupil, became employee of the month at the medical center, and defeated Hyuga Neji. We are going to talk more about this, Jiraiya. Soon. I suggest you make sure you get your affairs in order. With that he walked away. Jiraiya remained on the floor while Sakura, who had heard what Katana Kage had said, started on a rant about the many times Naruto has insulted her or interfered in her relationship with Sasuke. I get the feeling I have made a serious mistake. He mused to himself. Tamari looked up at the sun. If I keep this up, his shadow will keep growing and he'll keep expanding his reach. I need to end this now. With that she planted her war fan into the ground and hid behind it. First I'll create a cage bunshin and send it out to distract him, then I'll push as much chakra as I can muster into a super-powered Kamitachi. Right now his shadow, as she saw a tendril reach out and used a hole in the ground as a marker to estimate its maximum reach. Good. She formed the hand seal. Time to begin the plan. Cage bunshin. No, her whole body froze up. What the my body is. She stood up and saw her opponent doing the same. Shikamaru smiled. Finally, Kajime no Jutsu. Success. He allowed his eyes to drift slightly to the audience and saw Choji spluttering half-chewed crisps everywhere. Ino was cheering and jumping about too much to notice. The other Sunanin were both looking very confused. Naruto looked really happy. Naruto, please acknowledge the progress I've made thanks to you. Then he saw him. And he was approaching Naruto. Shikamaru turned away and tried to stay focused as he made Tamari turn to look behind her. To answer your question, I can reach you because of what's behind you. Remember? Naruto dug a tunnel to ambush Hyuga in the last match. That hole behind you is connected to large hole here in front of you. No way, a shadow in the tunnel. Exactly. Hey Neji, should you really be up and about now? I hit you pretty hard and that seal removal still needs time to settle. Naruto looked at the Juken prodigy curiously. Neji came to stand at the balcony next to the blonde genin. I could say something similar to you, Naruto. The proctor was near to pronouncing you dead not too long ago. Neji turned himself away at this point. Fool. Why remind him of that? He has given me an incredible thing and I remind him of that. Fool. He felt a hand touch his shoulder and was pulled back around to face Naruto. Stop moping, Neji, I'm still in one piece and I would never want someone to hold back in a fight. Otherwise, how can you know you've really beaten an opponent? He said this with a grin and Neji nodded in agreement. Yosh. Wise words, young Naruto. To unlock true strength, one must let the fires of youth burn bright on the battlefield. Might Guy stood behind them with Lee beside him. Lee seemed embarrassed, standing amongst a ninja in crutches, but he breathed out and stood as resolutely as he could. Guy turned to Neji. Neji, I shall allow you time to recover from the match and the seal removal, but afterwards we're going to run punishment drills for your unyouthful actions, and then we can move on to some new training. I recently ran into my old sensei, and so I can now train you a special jutsu that should prove invaluable. He gave a thumbs up and his teeth glinted in the sun. Neji could see that his sensei knew he regretted his actions, and so he wasn't as angry as he could have been. They all turned to watch the rest of the fight, and Naruto wrapped an arm around Neji to pull up to cheer Neji on until Neji started to join in on the cheering, the blonde's enthusiasm proving contagious. Asuma smiled at his student's clever ruse. He kept attacking with his shadow to direct her towards that tunnel, like hurting the Naruto. He was so much more active in this battle and so plainly obvious that the Kunoichi never took into account the idea of there being hidden shadows. Clever, Shikamaru. You planned so many moves ahead, like in a game of shogi. There's no way for her to escape. It's checkmate. Temari gritted her teeth. This guy, that trick he pulled with his shirt was just to move me to here. He forced Dosu out into a fight with me for the same reason and to make me take care of him while he maintained his position. All of his moves so far I thought they were desperate attacks, but all diversions. She felt herself being pulled forward, being forced to walk until she was face to face with a tactician who dwarfed her own strategic skills. You can't make me quit just by trapping me like this, so you better have something else, brat. She said with what little bravado she had left. Think. Temari, think. There's got to be a way out of this. The crowds were cheering now, though the matchup had seemed totally tame to everyone at first, the recent upset had drastically changed their opinion. It wasn't flashy or bizarre, it was simply one of the best tactical battles they'd seen. The older members of the audience started to chatter about how they'd done something similar in a game of shogi. Asuma started to clap his hands in approval. Toji had begun to tear through his snacks at an incredible pace, the exhilaration of the battle whetting his appetite. When suddenly, from the corner of his eye, Shikamaru saw Naruto's arm around Neji's and it tore at his concentration. He felt he had to see this properly, that if he did so it wouldn't be true. And the Kage fell apart. An opening. Temari felt her body relax and aimed a solid kick into the Nara's face. He rolled with the kick and spun to deliver his own. It landed with a meaty thwack and she felt her shoulder pop out of place. She dove for her fan and dragged as much chakra as possible out of herself and hurriedly crammed it into her war fan. Do it now. Do it quick before he has the chance to relaunch his Kage. From this close proximity, he'll be worse off than that kunoichi from before. She turned and swung but stopped dead. The words didn't come out. They couldn't come out. She felt a strong grip around her neck and it pressed harder. She let out a soft whimper as she saw Shikamaru standing a few feet from her. If he's there then what's Hage Kubishibari no Jutsu? Shikamaru called out as he tightened his shadows around her neck. He saw her try to reach for her neck and find nothing to grab hold of. He started to walk over and felt the shadows strengthen with each step. Soon she lost the energy to scrabble at her neck, then her legs gave in. He knelt next to her. Be thankful I'm not the kind of ninja who likes to break the backs of a defeated opponent because I don't think you've got a bushy-browed teammate who would come to your rescue. Finally she passed out and the stench of urine filled the young Nara's nostrils. He turned away and called away his shadows. The proctor stepped forward to announce the winner when suddenly. Zankuha. A blast of decapitating airwaves tore apart the tunnel in the area that Shikamaru was standing. Pieces of straw in the air and on the ground started to twitch and move. They swirled and charged towards Shikamaru, who could do nothing but run. Finally, the straw stopped and formed a mass just above the unconscious Dosu. Another Dosu appeared and landed next to the one on the ground. Only he wasn't wearing the melody arm. Not bad, eh? Bet you didn't see that coming, Mr. Tactician. He crouched down to pick up the melody arm and put it back on. My melody arm uses Deadman's autopilot device built into it. It continues to attack and move the body to attack until it's destroyed. I attached it to this straw dummy and hid in the straw while you two battled it out and wore yourselves down for me. As Dosu aimed the pipe, Shikamaru looked around and then formed the hand seal to create two shadow copies. As the Zankuha tore across the arena, the three Shikamarus all jumped into the air. The attack struck too, but they quickly became smoke. Illusions. The real Shikamaru was just on the edge and was propelled to the side. Dosu watched as the pineapple head made a solid landing in a large puddle of blood. No. He predicted the direction of my attack and plotted where to land. That area there should be soft and spongy still, perfect landing spot. What is this kid? With his hands and feet red with blood, Shikamaru ran to the side to avoid another Zankuha and threw a kunai in retaliation. It missed, but it did cause Dosu to stop attacking for a moment. Shikamaru stopped and turned to Dosu. I knew you were still active, I read a book once about the War Shroud and what it could do. And now you should quit. Dosu coughed in surprise, trying not to laugh. I should quit. You've not got any tunnels near you and you're too far away to use a shadow on me. Meanwhile, I've got you in my sights and I've got a long-range weapon right here. Zankuha. The attack surged forward, but instead of moving, Nara just knelt down and laid two bloody hands on the ground. Fuinjutsu. Moko. Kai. The ground shook once more and again it erupted with kunai and shuriken and all manner of weapons, all aimed at Dosu. They collided with the Zankuha, and though some shattered, the rest soon overpowered the attack. Dosu ran. How in the world did he do that? He didn't make it, he's not the caster. And this is some sort of Uzumaki clan special Fuinjutsu. Nearly a bloodline blood. When he landed from the Zankuha, he landed in a puddle of it. He landed in a puddle of Uzumaki blood and then smeared it on the ground where that Uzumaki created the seal. He must have had this planned out the moment Irie appeared. No, he said he'd known the moment he saw the Wara Shroud he had this planned from the beginning. A large hammer managed to land a hit square in the back of the former Odonin, and he fell down hard. The weapon circled menacingly. Okay. I give. I quit. You win. Just call off the attack. The proctor raised a hand. Winner. Nara Shikamaru. The crowd roared with cheers for the young genin, and Naruto leapt down to congratulate his friend. Grinning like a madman, the orange genin pulled Shikamaru along for a victory lap around the arena, while some Iryonin ran over to the two defeated ninja to see to their wounds. Kage finished his last bag of crisps. Man, Shikamaru has really changed this month, he's so motivated now. Ino looked over at her pleasingly plump teammate and saw his sad expression. He's been friends with Shikamaru longer than we've been a team, he must be worried that they're drifting apart. It's not like he has a lot of other friends, he doesn't hang out with many other ninja, unless it's for a mission, and all the civilians our age make fun of him. I've not helped much either though, have I? Ino placed a comforting hand on Choji's shoulder. He probably just didn't want people to think our team was weak. Choji, we both lost, and that soon a team all got through. 2/3 of Team 7 got through too. I'm sure Shikamaru has a reason for this turnaround. You'd be right. The two genin jumped out of their seats when Asuma's voice appeared out of nowhere. Their jonin instructor took up a seat next to them and lit another cigarette. Shikamaru made a little wager with me, if he won, we'd all eat at Yukinokyu for a week. All you can eat. I'd pay. If he lost, he'd pay. Asuma smiled as Choji burst off of his chair again and started to cheer loudly. Ino covered her face at the antics of her teammate. Ino looked up and asked her sensei a question. What happens if he wins the whole thing? Asuma blew out a large smoke ring and grinned at them. A year of all you can eat Yukinokyu. Choji heard this and simply passed out. Alma laughed and turned to the arena again. As he watched his candidate for promotion circle the arena, he considered his personality. Normally lacking in motivation, it could mean it allows him to make calm and collected decisions. He knows his strengths and skills, so he doesn't panic in battle or lose his cool. No matter what the situation, he can always act calmly. When people talk about the right mental makeup for a Chunin, Shikamaru has all the qualities of a good leader. Izumo and Kitetsu were still trying to work out the amount they would have to pay to cover Uzumaki's raiment tab when they stopped to consider the victor of the last match. Izumo spoke first. When you measure the value of a small unit leader, it's often the case that protecting the team is more important than completing the mission. Kitetsu nodded. Yeah, in information gathering, you can't be saying, I completed my mission, but my whole team got wiped out. You need a guy who can balance the risks, sacrifice and the mission on a scale and make the best decision for the whole. If you can't act and think with the lives of your teammates as the top priority, then you have no place being a Chunin. In which case, I doubt that Neji guy will get put forward. I'm not sure with Naruto though. He obviously has the moves, but I checked Team 7's mission reports and I'm struggling to figure out what has been going on with their training. When we went for our exams, Sensei had us do at least 10 C rank missions. They have more D ranks than all the genin teams put together and only one C rank that got upgraded to B and included an S rank rogue ninja. However, he's been working at the medical center most of the last month, working as part of a medical team, and he spent a chunk of the match just trying to find out what Neji's beef was. That is a question then, is that kid ready for Chunin? But there's another question that's bugging me right now. Really? What's that? Where's Uchiha Sasuke? Where's Sasuke? Naruto looked around, trying to pick out his teammate and rival from the masses. He came to a stop, causing the Nara holding his hand to bump straight into him. Boy Naruto, be a bit careful with stopping when you're dragging someone around. It's bothersome crashing into stuff. Though trying to sound nonchalant, the next in line for the position of head of clan was looking around too. He didn't know the Uchiha well, but he knew that there was no way that the Council of Elders in Konoha would allow the last Uchiha to duck out of a match. He looked up at Gaara. That guy was ready to kill Lee for landing a few hits on him. If it wasn't for Naruto-focused Shikamaru. He shook himself out of his thoughts as he saw Aburame Shino descend onto the arena. At the center of the arena, the genin gathered together around the proctor. Gaara glared menacingly at the blonde genin. Shikamaru moved slightly behind Naruto, connecting their shadows and increasing the maximum reach of his jutsu. Genma tried to gauge the remaining genin. Uzumaki looked confident and full of energy. Shikamaru looked scared, but there was a look of resolve on his face that told Genma that the young Nara was going to stand his ground. Gaara looked like madness and rage personified. Shino was impenetrable. That guy is one cool customer. With no others appearing, Genma cleared his throat to get their attention. Well, since there's no one left, I guess you guys are the finalists. One of you didn't fight at all, another of you had their opponent quit before anything happened, another of you died of blood loss, then woke up, and one of you just fought two people at once. I'll get some of the jonin to give a demonstration while you recover and prepare. Then you'll be matched up as follows. Uzumaki vs Gaara, then Aburam vs Nara. Aburam raised his hand. They all turned. Excuse me Chunin exam proctor Shiranui Genma, I have a request to make of you. I wish to face Ibaku no Gaara in battle. Gaara finally showed an emotion other than cold hatred, absolute shock and bewilderment. Shino stepped forward and pushed his sunglasses further up his nose. In this exam I have had one disappointing opponent and a spineless coward of an opponent. I am forwarding this request due to frustration and a wish for a strong opponent. At this, Shikamaru moved towards the bug user. I mean no offense Nara, but your style of combat would not be suitable. He turned to face his desired opponent. I hope you are not as secretive as your painted sibling. Gaara glowered at that statement but was stopped from countering by Genma, turning them all to face the Hokage and Kazekage. Ladies and gentlemen. The genin competitors will have a short recess and we will then continue with the finals. Noticing the rumblings of discontent, Genma continued. Until then. We will have some of Konoha's very own jonin come down and give you a demonstration of their prowess and skill. Cheers erupted from the crowds as the jonin amongst them began to feverishly come up with some kind of display or technique that would get the crowd going. Someone has cast some kind of jinjutsu trap on the audience. Kurenai exclaimed to herself. The jinjutsu mistress of Konoha was creating an elaborate sequence of jinjutsu for the audience and felt the presence of the unknown creation. It feels like a sleeping Neji the weak-minded or the unguarded at the whim of the caster. The reports are true then, Orochimaru is planning for his invasion to begin within the Chunin exam finals. There has to be some way for me to disarm it or reduce its effectiveness. Kurenai changed the pattern of her jinjutsu and directed them to become more fluid and free-form so that she could focus her mind on defeating the enemy jinjutsu. Finally she decided to create her very own net closer to the audience. It would mix and muddle up any jinjutsu beside her own. Uchiha Sasuke straightened his new outfit and tried to crane his neck around the corner to peek at what was happening in the stadium, only to be stopped by his sensei's hand. Kakashi, why are we waiting in the shadows like this? I could get disqualified for tardiness. Kakashi turned his young student to face him. He still doesn't call me sensei and yet he referred to Uzumaki as sensei. Ungrateful punk, maybe I should forbid the use of this technique I have taught him, the copycat ninja had a Kakashi mused to himself before he finally spoke. Sasuke, your opponent tried to kill you before the finals. By playing possum, we can have a greater impact on him by arriving at the last minute. Yes but, trust me. Trust your Kakashi-sensei. Yosh. Thank you Yuuhi for your enthralling display. But now it is time for the flames of youth. Kurenai was blown across the arena as a large tortoise landed with a massive thud in the very center of arena. Standing atop it, Might Guy was loudly punching and kicking outwards till he burst into the air and threw out a series of large scrolls. From these scrolls came a large number of kung fu training dummies of different shapes and sizes. Ladies and gentlemen. I give to you a thrilling display of most youthful taijutsu training. In the crowd Rock Lee cheered loudly as his sensei begun to blur across the arena, doing a series of exercises with each dummy till it exploded from the force of Guy's blows. In a short time, the arena was littered with splinters of wood. Guy stopped and took a moment to concentrate before he disappeared into a blur. The splinters disappeared from the floor and a mass started to grow in the center of the arena. The mass continued to grow until it became two blurry pillars. After some time, Guy stopped. And the crowd beheld his creation, two wooden figures carved from splinters hammered together by tremendous force. In the center of the arena were statues of Rock Lee and Might Guy, both performing the nice guy pose. He rejoined the audience and again stood with Lee. We will get through this Lee. I believe you have the will and determination to overcome your injuries and still become a truly splendid ninja. Lee turned to him with tears in his eyes and soon Guy had tears in his eyes too. They embraced each other and all that was left in their world was a teacher and his wonderful student. Okage-sama, may I have a word? Hiruzen turned to see his old student, Jiraiya of the Sannin, standing in front of him. Jiraiya. You disappeared nearly a month ago with a genin of Konoha. Can you explain yourself? Hiruzen was furious. He had expected Jiraiya to stay and train Naruto for a time, and instead he had run off with Naruto's teammate. Hokage-sensei, I was remembering what I had lost. The Hokage's anger cooled. He knew how hard Jiraiya had taken the loss of both his teammates. But I have some other news to talk to you about. It concerns a former student of mine. Katana Kage. The Sandaime Hokage nodded. Yes, Katana Kage. I spoke with him earlier. He's petitioning for godfatherhood of young Uzumaki. Jiraiya didn't know about this, but he wasn't surprised either. I'm not here often enough anyway. Katana Kage wants to talk. And when he says that without an ounce of humor or a glimmer of a smile, it means he wants a fight. The Hokage choked on his pipe. Yes. He is angry with what has happened in Naruto's childhood, and he blames me for it since I was always away, and even when I didn't visit. Those long-term surveillance missions you forced on me have meant Naruto grew up without anyone to call a friend and was despised by all. He blames me, and if he knew you kept on giving me missions he would come after you too. I won't tell him, old man. I'll take his anger. I was the only one besides Minato who could. With that he turned and left, and Hiruzen sighed into his chair. The Kazekage leaned forward. Why so glum, old man? Because of me, my pupil has earned the hatred of his pupil and abandoned his godson. Because of me, my pupil and his pupil are going to fight, and I don't think they'll both survive it. Hiruzen took another puff of his pipe and hid his face with his hat. Tenten ran across to her team. Guy-sensei. Lee. She purposely forgot to call out to Neji, and she smiled when she saw that his feelings were hurt. Guy shook his head at his Kunoichi student. Tenten, that is no way to treat a fellow teammate. He has learned from his mistake, and he will be taking my punishment drills when he has fully recovered. He rested a hand on her shoulder and she looked up at him. I understand that your feelings toward Neji are not happy, but right now let's just cheer on our fellow ninja. They all heard clapping and turned to see a man in a green jumpsuit with a mullet. Katana Kage-sensei. Katana Kage stopped clapping. Well said, Guy-kun. I see that youthful lust for life and sense of fair play are still burning brightly in your heart. I apologize for my daughter's behavior. She has become close to young Naruto this past month and was very concerned about him during his fight with your student Neji. Neji turned away slightly and stared out to the arena. Tenten has grown close to Naruto. Thought Neji. I knew they had to have had some contact with each other for her to give him my kimono. But how close is Guy-sensei's teacher saying? Are they a couple now? Why does it bother me so? The idea that Naruto is involved with Tenten causes a strange feeling in my chest. What is happening to me? Rock Lee watched all this and turned away. Naruto has managed to defeat Neji, my rival. He has proven that hard work can defeat a genius. With that, a dream of mine has been fulfilled. But not by me. And next he may well be battling the one who even I couldn't beat. The one who, without realizing, Lee squeezed his crutch hard enough to open up cuts in his bandaged hand and blood began to seep out. In his mind he saw himself in a cage and Naruto running on ahead. Why does this hurt so much? Tears began to well up in his eyes. A hand appeared on his shoulder. He looked up to see Katana Kage. Lee, did you know I make swords? Lee nodded. When forging them I have to heat the metal till it is soft enough to shape. Sometimes it becomes brittle and breaks. Do you know what I do then? Lee looked at the mullet ninja with a confused look. I reforge it and I make it stronger and more durable. Do you understand, Lee? Lee managed a hesitant nod. Though you're broken now, we shall reforge you, you shall reforge you. And you will be stronger than ever. And don't be too envious of that Uzumaki boy. You may think he's running on ahead of you, but he is in awe of your skills and ability, you are his role model. Lee nodded and wiped the tears in his eyes away. Thank you, sir. For your guidance and for your student. Abiram Shino stood across the arena from his opponent, Gaara. This opponent infuses sand with chakra and manipulates it to act as a defense and as a weapon. Some of his sand manipulation is not even consciously performed, it can react automatically. Some of my insects are already analyzing the Uzumaki blood puddle and the seal he created. They may come in useful, however, I should avoid making it seem as though ninjas from Konoha are all one-trick ponies. Few had ever seen Shino's full face, and fewer still had ever seen Shino demonstrate any emotion other than distant coolness. But right now, Shino was excited. He had been left frustrated and raring for a fight. Though quite pacifistic in nature most of the time, Shino's insects weren't quite so peaceful. And their anxiousness to get the fight started was affecting Shino's judgment. Genma raised his hand. Abiram Shino vs Gaara. Begin.